Chapter 1. Charlemagne's Legacy. The mists of the early 9th century shrouded the nascent Holy Roman Empire, a patchwork of kingdoms and duchies newly unified under the iron fist and shrewd intellect of Charlemagne. In this era of nascent power, amidst the sprawling vineyards and dense forests of the Swabian lands, lived the ancestors of three families whose destinies would intertwine inextricably with the empire's tumultuous history: the von Habsburgs, the Wittelsbachs, and the Hohenzollerns. Their stories, initially humble, would bloom into grand narratives of ambition, betrayal, and enduring legacy, echoing across centuries of dynastic struggle and religious upheaval. The von Habsburgs, at this nascent stage, were far from the imperial dynasty they would later become. Their origins lay in the quiet village of Habsburg, nestled amidst the rolling hills overlooking the river Aare. Rudolf, the patriarch of this young family, was a relatively minor nobleman, his landholdings modest compared to the vast estates controlled by more established families. Yet, Rudolf possessed a sharp mind and an unwavering ambition, qualities that would prove vital in the cutthroat world of early medieval politics. His wife, Haelwig, was a woman of quiet strength, her influence on her husband's decisions subtly shaping the family's trajectory. Their eldest son, Burchard, inherited his father's ambition, though tempered with a cautious pragmatism. Their younger son, Werner, proved more inclined towards piety, finding solace in the quiet routines of the monastery, a contrast to his brother's worldly desires. The young Habsburgs were not yet players on the grand stage of imperial politics, but the seeds of their future greatness were being sown in the fertile ground of their modest beginnings. The daily rhythm of their lives was a testament to the era: the arduous labor of tilling the land, the communal prayers in the village church, and the quiet evenings spent around the hearth, sharing stories and planning for the future. Meanwhile, in the heart of Bavaria, the Wittelsbachs were establishing their own roots. Unlike the Habsburgs' quiet beginnings, the Wittelsbachs held a slightly more prominent position in the early Holy Roman Empire. Their ancestor, Arnold, was Count of Cheyenne, a title that provided a degree of influence in the regional power structure. Yet, their influence was still localized and they needed to play their cards carefully in the vast political game of the era. Arnold's strong military reputation gave his family a certain leverage among their neighboring nobles. His shrewd political acumen allowed him to navigate the treacherous currents of Bavarian politics, securing strategic alliances and consolidating his family's position. His sons, likewise, were marked by a cunning intelligence and an unflinching ambition. Their early lives were filled with the duties and responsibilities of managing their lands, training their men-at-arms, and navigating the complicated social and political hierarchies of Bavaria, a region renowned for its fierce independence and strong warrior culture. Hunting expeditions, tournaments, and the constant vigilance required to maintain control of their estates shaped their personalities and prepared them for the political challenges that lay ahead. The grand castles of their era weren't mere residences, but fortified bastions of power and symbols of their influence, each stone representing a carefully calculated step in their ascent. Further east, in Franconia, the Hohenzollerns were staking their own claim. Conrad, the founder of the Hohenzollern lineage, was a relatively minor count, his influence confined to a small swathe of land. He and his wife, Mechtild, were devout Christians, and their deep faith infused every aspect of their lives and shaped their decisions. Their sons were raised in the devout faith of their parents, a belief system that influenced their political actions, often steering them toward calculated alliances within the church. Unlike the Habsburgs' pragmatic approach and the Wittelsbachs' assertive demeanor, the Hohenzollerns' early years were marked by a degree of cautious maneuvering within the religious and political landscapes, carefully aligning themselves with influential church figures. Their castles, though smaller than those of the Wittelsbachs, were nonetheless formidable symbols of authority, built with a blend of practical defense and religious symbolism. The daily lives of these families, during Charlemagne's reign, were a tapestry woven from threads of labor, prayer, and politics. Life in rural areas saw the families deeply involved in the agricultural economy, reliant on the seasons for their sustenance. Their days were structured around the rhythm of the fields and the demands of their growing influence. The seasonal cycles dictated the pace of their lives, from the planting and harvesting of crops to the care of livestock, their survival and their early growth were tied to the success of their agricultural endeavors. The social hierarchy of the period heavily influenced their family structures. Feudal obligations demanded loyalty to their superiors while fostering a strict code of conduct within the family unit. Eldest sons were typically groomed for leadership, inheriting their father's lands and titles, while younger sons often found opportunities within the church or as soldiers, creating a dynamic of ambition and opportunity that shaped the family's destinies. The women played significant, though often unseen, roles, acting as advisors to their husbands, managing households, and ensuring the smooth operation of the family's affairs. Their influence was subtle but considerable, their actions often determining the course of familial decisions. Charlemagne's death in 814 AD signaled the beginning of a turbulent period. The seeds of power that had been planted during his reign began to sprout into fierce competition as his vast empire fractured into warring kingdoms. The von Habsburgs, the Wittelsbachs, and the Hohenzollerns were not yet major players in this fragmented landscape, but the foundations they laid during Charlemagne's era would serve them well in the coming centuries of struggle and upheaval. Their early aspirations, relationships, and strategic maneuvering foreshadowed the epic power struggles that would define their families' histories and the course of the Holy Roman Empire itself. The stage was set for a drama of unparalleled scope and complexity, played out against the vast backdrop of medieval Europe. The quiet villages of their beginnings would eventually be overshadowed by the grandeur of imperial courts, the humble prayers of their ancestors drowned out by the clang of arms and the echoes of dynastic conflict. The death of Charlemagne in 814 AD cast a long shadow over the nascent Holy Roman Empire. His iron fist, which had held together a patchwork of disparate kingdoms and duchies, was gone, and the fragile unity he had forged began to unravel. The empire, so painstakingly assembled, fractured under the weight of competing ambitions and simmering resentments. The carefully constructed alliances, built on mutual respect and a shared vision under Charlemagne's rule, dissolved into a maelstrom of power struggles and bitter betrayals. This was an era where loyalty was often a fluid commodity, traded for strategic advantage, and where the line between friend and foe could shift with the changing tides of political fortune. The immediate aftermath of Charlemagne's death saw his vast empire divided amongst his heirs. Louis the Pious, his sole surviving son, inherited the entire realm, but his reign was far from peaceful. Internal conflicts, fueled by Louis's own indecisiveness and the ambitions of his sons, Lothair, Pepin, and Louis the German, plunged the empire into a prolonged period of turmoil. The once unified territories fell prey to internal strife, with each prince vying for control over larger portions of the empire. This division weakened the empire significantly, paving the way for the emergence of powerful regional nobles, who seized upon the opportunities presented by the weakening central authority. The von Habsburgs, still relatively minor players on the grand stage of European politics, observed these developments with a keen eye. Rudolf, ever pragmatic, saw the fragmentation of the empire not as a setback, but as an opportunity. The weakening central authority presented a chance to expand their influence, to consolidate their holdings, and to build the foundations for their future greatness. He fostered alliances with other ambitious nobles, carefully choosing his allies based on their strategic value, not necessarily on sentiment. Burchard, his elder son, displayed the same shrewd political instincts, proving himself to be a capable negotiator and a shrewd strategist in the cutthroat world of medieval politics. Meanwhile, in Bavaria, the Wittelsbachs, with their slightly more established position, played a bolder game. Arnold's sons, emboldened by their father's legacy of military prowess and political acumen, actively engaged in the power struggles that were reshaping the Bavarian landscape. They leveraged their military strength, forging alliances with strategically important nobles and expanding their territories through both negotiation and conquest. Their actions reflected a more assertive approach compared to the Habsburgs' patient strategy. They understood that in the chaotic aftermath of Charlemagne's death, decisiveness and bold moves were key to survival, and perhaps even dominance. Their influence grew significantly as they expanded their control, acquiring new territories and solidifying their position as one of the leading families in Bavaria. The Hohenzollerns, in Franconia, adopted a more cautious approach, focusing on securing their existing lands and leveraging their close ties to the church. Conrad's sons, influenced by their parents' piety, maintained close relationships with powerful ecclesiastical figures, securing their support and strengthening their political position. They were masters of calculated alliances, carefully navigating the complex web of loyalties and alliances that characterized Franconian politics. Their quiet strength and calculated maneuvering ensured their survival and laid the groundwork for their future growth. Their strategy, unlike the Habsburgs' pragmatic approach and the Wittelsbach's aggressive expansion, was based on consolidating their power through diplomacy and religious influence. The lives of ordinary people were profoundly affected by the political instability that followed Charlemagne's death. The once peaceful villages and towns, previously protected by a strong central government, now faced increasing threats from marauding bands, opportunistic nobles, and the ravages of war. The rhythm of agricultural life, previously so predictable, was disrupted by raids, forced levies, and the constant fear of violence. The harvests, vital for survival, were often destroyed or stolen, leading to widespread famine and suffering. The once safe roads, crucial for trade and communication, became treacherous pathways, haunted by brigands and opportunistic soldiers. The decline in trade and commerce brought hardship and economic upheaval to many communities. Villagers faced the grim reality of constant insecurity, their lives hanging precariously in the balance. The contrast between courtly life and the lives of the ordinary people was stark. While the noble families maneuvered for power, engaging in intricate political games and vying for influence, the villagers bore the brunt of the ensuing chaos. The constant warfare, the unpredictable taxation, the lack of security all contributed to a pervasive sense of fear and insecurity amongst the peasantry. While the grand castles of the nobility remained largely untouched by the conflict's immediate impact, the villages surrounding them experienced the full force of the political unrest. The idyllic agricultural life, previously the backbone of their existence, was torn apart by the instability. The grand aspirations and political machinations of the nobility had a tangible and profoundly negative effect on their daily lives. The reign of Louis the Pious proved to be a tumultuous period, marked by internal wars, rebellions, and the constant threat of invasion. The political instability of the period, punctuated by the ambitious maneuvers of several powerful families, further exacerbated the hardships of ordinary people. It was a world where the promises of peace and unity, once symbolized by Charlemagne's reign, had been shattered, leaving behind a landscape of conflict and uncertainty. This was a time when the nascent families, the von Habsburgs, the Wittelsbachs, and the Hohenzollerns, were beginning to make their mark on the tumultuous stage of medieval Europe, their early decisions and alliances shaping the course of the Holy Roman Empire for centuries to come. The seeds of their future dominance were sown amidst the chaos and turmoil, their growth fueled by ambition, cunning, and strategic maneuvering in a constantly shifting political landscape. The fragments of Charlemagne's empire became fertile ground for dynastic power plays, where the lives of millions were affected by the ambitions and strategic choices of a handful of powerful families. The era was a testament to the fragility of political unity and the enduring human desire for power. The death of Charlemagne had fractured more than just political alliances, it had cracked the very foundation of religious unity that had underpinned his reign. While the empire splintered into warring factions, the Church, a powerful institution in its own right, remained a significant player, its influence weaving through the tapestry of political maneuvering. The von Habsburgs, the Wittelsbachs, and the Hohenzollerns, each acutely aware of the Church's power, embarked on distinct strategies to secure its favor, understanding that papal blessings could translate into political legitimacy and even military support. Rudolf von Habsburg, ever the pragmatist, approached the Church with calculated deference. He understood that overt displays of piety could be as effective as military might. He generously endowed monasteries in his territories, not merely out of religious conviction, but as a shrewd investment. The Benedictine monastery at St. Gall, for example, became a recipient of Habsburg patronage, receiving significant land grants and financial support. In return, the monastery's abbot, a man of considerable influence within the ecclesiastical hierarchy, became a staunch supporter of the Habsburg cause, offering counsel and advocating for their interests within the Church. This quiet but consistent support from influential ecclesiastical figures proved invaluable, bolstering the Habsburgs' reputation and providing them with a crucial network of allies within the complex world of medieval church politics. The meticulously kept records of St. Gall, detailing Habsburg donations and the subsequent letters of support from the abbot, stand as testament to the efficacy of Rudolf's pragmatic approach. Burchard, Rudolf's son, inherited his father's pragmatic approach but added a touch of his own cunning. He understood the nuances of ecclesiastic power, recognizing that influence wasn't solely concentrated in the monasteries. He cultivated relationships with powerful bishops and archbishops, offering strategic support in return for their political backing. His negotiations weren't always about material wealth. He offered his services in settling disputes between rival monasteries, acting as a mediator and thereby gaining their favor. He also understood the power of symbolic gestures. His attendance at important church ceremonies, his generous contributions to cathedral building projects, and his public displays of piety, all meticulously crafted for maximum impact, solidified his image as a devout and trustworthy leader. His reputation extended far beyond the immediate Habsburg territories, making him a welcome guest in numerous ecclesiastical courts. Such carefully cultivated connections proved invaluable during times of crisis, when the Habsburgs needed the church's support to maintain stability and legitimacy. The Wittelsbachs in Bavaria took a bolder approach. Arnold's sons, inheriting their father's military prowess, were less inclined towards the subtle diplomacy favored by the Habsburgs. Their strategy relied more on a display of forceful power. They were not averse to using their military might to protect, or seize, church lands, presenting themselves as protectors of the faith, even if their methods were less than scrupulous. Their actions, while sometimes controversial, often resulted in securing the support of local bishops who appreciated their firm protection against raiding bands and ambitious neighboring nobles. They built impressive churches and cathedrals, not just as acts of piety, but as symbols of their power and dominance. The construction of these magnificent buildings, often undertaken on a scale that dwarfed previous structures, served not only as centers of religious life, but also as powerful visual reminders of the Wittelsbach's strength and influence. These imposing structures stood as testaments to their piety, their power, and their determination to control their territory. This approach, while potentially risky, often yielded significant results, gaining them the support of ecclesiastical leaders who valued protection above all else. The Hohenzollerns, in Franconia, played a different game altogether. Conrad's sons, deeply influenced by their parents' piety, opted for a strategy deeply rooted in religious devotion and genuine faith. They maintained close ties with the powerful ecclesiastical institutions of Franconia, securing their support through genuine piety and unwavering loyalty. Their actions were guided by a deep respect for the Church's authority, which translated into unwavering political support. They actively participated in religious ceremonies, established new monasteries, and championed charitable works, strengthening their image as devout and righteous rulers. Their alliances with the clergy were far less transactional than those of the other two families, often grounded in shared beliefs and a mutual respect for religious principles. This dedication, however sincere, also provided them with significant leverage. The clergy's support provided them with legitimacy, enabling them to consolidate their control over Franconia with a reduced risk of conflict. They became trusted allies, not merely through calculated political maneuvers, but through consistent adherence to the religious beliefs of the time. This genuine faith, coupled with strategic alliances, allowed them to solidify their position and lay the foundations of their long-lasting legacy. The role of the Church extended beyond mere political alliances. Monasteries served as centers of learning, preserving ancient texts and providing education. The Hohenzollerns, in particular, benefited from this, establishing ties with monasteries that possessed extensive libraries, granting their sons access to education and shaping their intellectual development. This fostered a culture of learning within the family, enhancing their administrative capabilities and political shrewdness. The monasteries also played a crucial role in the everyday life of the people, offering shelter, food, and spiritual guidance. The family's relationship with the Church extended down to the level of the villagers, impacting their lives both politically and spiritually. The Church's power transcended the purely political realm. It touched every facet of life in medieval Europe. The religious beliefs of the individuals within these noble families profoundly influenced their political decisions. Religious zeal could lead to alliances formed on the basis of shared faith, while religious differences could engender mistrust and conflict. The complex interplay of religious conviction and political pragmatism shaped the destinies of these families, creating a dynamic and multifaceted narrative where faith and fealty were inextricably linked. The religious landscape of the time was not a passive backdrop, but an active participant in the unfolding drama. The choices made by these families, influenced by their religious beliefs and their relationships with the Church, would have far-reaching consequences, shaping the political landscape of Europe for generations to come. The delicate balance between religious devotion and political ambition defined this era, leaving an enduring mark on the legacy of these three powerful dynasties. The tapestry of medieval Europe was woven with threads of faith, power, and ambition, where the Church was far from a silent observer, but a formidable force shaping the course of history. The interplay of these elements made for a period of tremendous upheaval and transformation, setting the stage for the dominance of these families in the centuries to follow. The consequences of their choices, driven by both religious conviction and political strategy, rippled outwards, affecting not only the nobility but the lives of ordinary people across the fractured empire. The death of Charlemagne had left a power vacuum, a gaping hole in the fabric of the Frankish Empire. The ensuing scramble for dominance wasn't just a clash of armies, it was a complex game of alliances, forged not only on battlefields, but also in the hallowed halls of monasteries and the opulent chambers of royal courts. The strategic marriages brokered between the Habsburgs, the Wittelsbachs, and the Hohenzollerns became crucial components of their strategies, solidifying their power and shaping the future of Europe. Rudolf von Habsburg, ever the pragmatist, understood the value of a strategic marriage as much as he understood the value of a well-placed land grant. His son, Burchard, inherited this acumen and honed it to a sharper edge. Burchard's marriage to Matilde of Burgundy wasn't simply a union of two noble families, it was a calculated move to expand Habsburg influence and consolidate their hold on territories bordering Burgundy. Matilde brought with her not just a substantial dowry, but also a network of influential Burgundian nobles, many of whom readily pledged their allegiance to the expanding Habsburg power. This alliance, carefully crafted through years of negotiation and diplomatic maneuvering, provided Burchard with a crucial buffer against his rivals, particularly the ambitious Wittelsbachs. The marriage contract itself was a meticulously crafted document, detailing not only the financial terms, but also the political responsibilities that each party would assume. The clauses concerning succession, the sharing of power, and the control over territories were negotiated with extreme care, reflecting the high stakes involved. It was a testament to the sophisticated political strategies employed by the Habsburgs, who understood that even seemingly minor clauses could have profound ramifications in the long term. The marriage festivities themselves were a carefully orchestrated display of power, showcasing the Habsburg wealth and prestige to solidify their position amongst the nobility of both Austria and Burgundy. The presence of numerous ecclesiastical dignitaries, secured through Burchard's prior diplomatic efforts, added a layer of religious legitimacy to the union, reinforcing the Habsburgs' position within the increasingly complex web of religious and political power. The success of this union is a testament to Burchard's shrewd understanding of the delicate balance between political expediency and dynastic ambition. He understood the significance of marrying not just for love, but for power. The Wittelsbachs, meanwhile, adopted a different approach to forging alliances. Arnold's sons, known more for their military might than their diplomatic skills, opted for marriages that would solidify their territorial control and further their military ambitions. Their marriages often involved families with strong military traditions, creating powerful alliances that could be swiftly mobilized to quell rebellions or launch aggressive campaigns against their rivals. The alliances served not only to increase their military strength, but also to legitimize their claims over the territories they controlled. Such marriages, however, sometimes came at a price. Forced unions, political expediency overriding personal desires, weren't uncommon. These unions, while militarily advantageous, were often fraught with internal conflicts and tensions, threatening the stability of the Wittelsbach realm. While the military strength gained through these alliances was undeniable, The lack of careful diplomatic maneuvering and an almost reckless disregard for long-term political consequences often led to conflicts within the family and with neighboring powers. The sheer display of military strength could intimidate, but it could also provoke. The Wittelsbach strategies, while initially successful in consolidating their power in Bavaria, lacked the strategic foresight and long-term planning of the Habsburgs. Their approach was far more reactive than proactive, leading to a precarious political position that often depended on sheer military might. The Hohenzollerns, known for their religious piety, approached the matter of alliances from a uniquely devout perspective. Their strategic marriages were carefully selected to further strengthen their religious standing and bolster their alliances within the powerful ecclesiastical circles of Franconia. They didn't prioritize military might or vast territories. Their focus was on consolidating their spiritual authority and forging lasting alliances with influential religious leaders. They sought marriages that would solidify their already strong religious position, thereby enhancing their legitimacy as rulers and providing a strong foundation for their governance. Their alliances were often celebrated not just in lavish royal ceremonies, but also in the religious rites performed at monasteries and cathedrals. Their choice of marriage partners reflected their emphasis on religious affiliation and devoutness. These partnerships weren't purely political. They often involved genuine affection and mutual respect, building strong and lasting familial bonds that proved instrumental in consolidating their power within Franconia. The religious aspect of these alliances was not merely a facade. Their devotion shaped their political decisions, creating a unique dynamic within the Hohenzollern family. It was an approach that stood in stark contrast to the more overtly political strategies of the Habsburgs and the Wittelsbachs. The roles of women in these political marriages were often overlooked but undeniably crucial. They weren't merely passive participants, they were shrewd negotiators and influential players in their own right. Matilde of Burgundy, for example, wasn't simply a bride, she was a powerful political asset who actively participated in Habsburg political affairs. Women in these noble families played a significant role in mediating disputes, influencing political decisions, and managing their families' estates. Their education and experience in managing their own household and resources ensured they were well equipped to manage their political responsibilities. They played a significant role in negotiating marriage contracts, ensuring favorable terms for their own families. They were more than just pawns in their families' power games. They were central players, capable of influencing political decisions and shaping the destinies of their respective families. Their influence extended beyond the family walls, shaping political alliances, social relationships, and even military strategies. The political landscape in post-Carolingian Europe was significantly shaped by the agency and influence exerted by women in prominent positions. Their actions often had a ripple effect, creating significant changes in the political dynamics and establishing their own legacy alongside their husbands. The long-term consequences of these strategic marriages were profound and far-reaching. The Habsburgs' carefully chosen alliances laid the foundation for their future expansion and dominance. Their consistent attention to detail in negotiations and their focus on long-term stability allowed them to consolidate their territories and create a powerful dynasty that would endure for centuries. The Wittelsbach's alliances, while initially successful, eventually led to internal power struggles and diminished their ability to withstand long-term challenges. Their lack of diplomatic finesse left them vulnerable and ultimately weakened their overall position. The Hohenzollerns, through their devoutness and well-placed religious alliances, secured a unique position that allowed them to flourish in the context of the political and religious landscape of the time. Their careful cultivation of relationships within the church ensured their continued legitimacy and support. The forging of alliances through marriage was not merely a personal matter. It was a high-stakes political strategy that profoundly impacted the political landscape of medieval Europe. The choices made by these families, the careful negotiations of marriage contracts, and the roles of women within those alliances, all contributed to the intricate tapestry of power and influence that shaped the destinies of these three prominent dynasties and the course of history itself. The legacy of these alliances continues to echo in the annals of European history, a testament to the complexities of power, the enduring impact of shrewd political maneuvering, and the often overlooked yet significant contribution of women in shaping the course of history. The fragile peace following Charlemagne's death shattered like a dropped goblet. The carefully constructed alliances, so meticulously woven through strategic marriages, were now put to the ultimate test. The crucible of war. The first sparks ignited in the borderlands between Habsburg and Wittelsbach territories, a seemingly minor dispute over grazing rights escalating into a full-blown conflict. Burchard von Habsburg, ever the pragmatist, initially attempted a diplomatic solution, sending envoys to negotiate with Arnold's eldest son, Siegfried. But Siegfried, a man whose temperament matched the brutal efficiency of his legions, refused to compromise. He saw the Habsburgs' growing influence as a direct threat to his own ambitions, a challenge to his claim of dominance in the region. The initial clash was swift and brutal. Siegfried's army, a formidable force renowned for its discipline and ferocity, swept across the contested lands, their cavalry cutting down Habsburg infantry like wheat before a scythe. The battle, fought near a small village nestled beside the Danube, was a harrowing spectacle of carnage. The clash of steel, the screams of the dying, and the thunder of hooves painted a grim picture of medieval warfare. Burchard, despite his strategic brilliance, found himself outmaneuvered. Siegfried's tactics were aggressive and relentless, exploiting the weaknesses in the Habsburg lines with ruthless precision. The Habsburg soldiers, while courageous, were outnumbered and outmatched, their lines collapsing under the sheer weight of the Wittelsbach onslaught. The consequences were devastating. The village was razed to the ground, its inhabitants either slain or driven into the surrounding forests. The fertile lands surrounding the Danube were scarred by the ravages of war, fields of grain trampled underfoot, and orchards laid waste. The aftermath was a scene of utter desolation, a grim testament to the brutal realities of medieval conflict. The Habsburgs suffered heavy losses, both in men and in material. Burchard, however, escaped with his life, albeit wounded and humiliated. The defeat was a bitter pill to swallow, forcing him to reassess his strategy and acknowledge the formidable military power of the Wittelsbachs. This initial defeat, however, would not be the end of the conflict, but merely the prelude to a longer and more bitter struggle. The defeat at the Danube served as a harsh lesson for Burchard. He understood that military might alone would not suffice. He needed to bolster his alliances, not only through further strategic marriages but also through forging stronger bonds with neighboring lords and securing the loyalty of his own vassals. He initiated a series of diplomatic maneuvers, seeking to strengthen his alliances with various noble families and secure their military support. He promised land grants, financial assistance, and strategic positions within his own court, enticing powerful lords to pledge their allegiance to the Habsburg cause. This period of consolidation was marked by intense diplomatic activity, with Burchard spending long hours negotiating alliances and securing promises of military aid. He was a master strategist, understanding the importance of solidifying his position through diplomacy and strategic partnerships, learning from the initial defeat and forging a new approach to counter the Wittelsbach threat. Meanwhile, the victory emboldened Siegfried and the Wittelsbachs. Their initial success fostered a sense of invincibility, leading to a series of aggressive campaigns against their neighbors. Siegfried, spurred on by his military triumph, pushed his forces further into Habsburg territory, seeking to capitalize on his advantage. He targeted strategically important towns and castles, hoping to cripple Habsburg's ability to resist. The sieges were long and brutal affairs, characterized by relentless assaults and desperate defenses. The scenes of these sieges were horrifying, battering rams smashing through stone walls, archers raining down volleys of arrows, and hand-to-hand combat in the streets and courtyards of besieged towns. These protracted sieges exacted a heavy toll on the civilian population, who often faced starvation and disease. The brutality of warfare was not confined to the battlefield. It spilled over into civilian life, leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. The Hohenzollerns, initially reluctant to be drawn into the conflict, found themselves caught in the crossfire. Their territory lay between the warring factions, leaving them vulnerable to attacks from either side. Conrad, the current head of the Hohenzollern dynasty, initially tried to maintain neutrality, but the escalating conflict made this increasingly difficult. He recognized the importance of maintaining his neutrality, for siding with either party could have devastating consequences, exposing his relatively small territory to the full fury of one of the larger belligerents. He understood that his family's survival might depend on their ability to navigate the treacherous currents of war without committing fully to either the Habsburgs or the Wittelsbachs. This required immense diplomatic skill and deft maneuvering to avoid becoming a pawn in the ongoing conflict. The impact of the war extended far beyond the battlefields. The economic repercussions were profound. The destruction of crops and infrastructure disrupted trade and commerce, leading to widespread famine and economic hardship. The constant warfare disrupted daily life, forcing many people to flee their homes and seek refuge in safer areas. The disruption of trade routes caused severe shortages of essential goods, pushing many communities to the brink of starvation. The monasteries, usually havens of peace and learning, found themselves caught in the conflict's cross-currents, their lands plundered, and their resources depleted. The war shattered the social fabric of the region, leaving a legacy of bitterness and resentment that would linger for generations. The human cost of the conflict was immeasurable. Thousands perished in battles, sieges, and from the resulting famine and disease. Families were torn apart, communities shattered, and the entire region scarred by the brutality of war. The emotional toll was as devastating as the physical one, with survivors left to grapple with the trauma and loss inflicted by the conflict. The scars left by the war stretched far beyond the immediate period of violence, profoundly impacting the generations that followed. The narrative became a chilling testament to the human cost of conflict, a reminder of the fragility of peace and the enduring consequences of war. As the first phase of the conflict drew to a close, a tentative peace was brokered, but the underlying tensions remained. The fragile truce masked a simmering resentment, a precarious peace built on shifting alliances and the ever-present threat of renewed conflict. The scars of the war, both physical and emotional, remained, a stark reminder of the brutal realities of power and the enduring impact of conflict. The fragile peace left all three families significantly altered: the Habsburgs humbled but not broken, the Wittelsbachs emboldened but wary, and the Hohenzollerns forever mindful of the precarious nature of neutrality in a world dominated by war. The shadows of war continued to loom large, casting a long and ominous pall over the future. The tentative peace was only a temporary reprieve, a brief pause before the next chapter in the long and bloody struggle for dominance. Chapter 2: Otto the Great's Unification. The fragile peace, brokered after the brutal skirmishes along the Danube, proved as tenuous as a spider's thread. While the immediate threat of open warfare between the Habsburgs, Wittelsbachs, and Hohenzollerns had receded, the underlying tensions remained, a simmering cauldron ready to boil over at the slightest provocation. This uneasy calm was soon disrupted by the rise of a new force, Otto I, King of the East Franks, a man who would irrevocably reshape the political landscape of Europe. His ambition, fueled by a potent blend of military prowess and political acumen, was nothing short of imperial domination. Otto's ascent to power was not without its challenges. He inherited a kingdom fractured by internal strife and external threats. The Magyars, a formidable nomadic people from the east, regularly raided Frankish territories, their lightning raids leaving a trail of destruction and terror. To the north, the Saxons, a fiercely independent people, resisted imperial authority, their loyalty wavering between submission and rebellion. Within the kingdom itself, powerful dukes and counts vied for power, their ambitions often at odds with the king's designs. Otto, however, was no ordinary king. He possessed a rare combination of strategic vision and military skill. He understood that true power rested not just on military strength, but also on the skillful manipulation of alliances and the effective governance of his vast territories. His initial focus was on consolidating his power base, systematically neutralizing his rivals and securing the loyalty of his most powerful vassals. He accomplished this through a mixture of shrewd diplomacy, decisive military action, and well-timed acts of both generosity and ruthless efficiency. The imperial court in Aachen, once a symbol of fractured authority, was transformed under Otto's rule into a center of power and influence. Its lavishness was breathtaking, a testament to the burgeoning imperial wealth and the emperor's ambition. Grand feasts, opulent ceremonies, and displays of power were carefully orchestrated to impress and intimidate alike. Otto's court attracted nobility from across Europe, drawn to its prestige and the possibility of securing imperial favor. Here, in this magnificent setting, the intricate social dynamics played out, alliances forged and broken, destinies shaped by courtly intrigue and the shifting sands of power. The Habsburgs, humbled by their earlier defeat, found themselves cautiously navigating the new political order. Burchard von Habsburg, a master strategist, recognized the need to secure Otto's favor. He sent lavish gifts to the imperial court, promising his unwavering loyalty and offering his military expertise to the emperor's campaigns. He understood that aligning with Otto offered the best chance of recovering his lost territories and restoring the Habsburg prestige. However, Burchard remained wary, carefully measuring his level of commitment to Otto, ever mindful of the need to preserve his own dynasty's autonomy and independence. The Wittelsbachs, initially riding high on their victories, also found themselves having to adjust to Otto's growing influence. Siegfried, despite his military successes, was not a man of diplomacy. His arrogance and uncompromising nature clashed with Otto's more measured approach. While acknowledging the emperor's power, Siegfried secretly nursed ambitions of challenging Otto's authority, believing that the emperor's focus on other threats provided a window of opportunity. This subtle undercurrent of dissent played out in the court's intricate social dances and veiled insults, adding another layer of complexity to the courtly drama. The Hohenzollerns, having weathered the initial storm of the Habsburg-Wittelsbach conflict, found themselves in a delicate position. Their geographical location, nestled between the expanding imperial power and the ambitious dukes, made neutrality a precarious balancing act. Conrad, the shrewd Hohenzollern leader, understood that his family's survival depended on their ability to maintain good relations with both Otto and the other powerful families, carefully avoiding entangling alliances that could expose them to the full force of imperial retribution or the wrath of ambitious rivals. Otto's military campaigns played a pivotal role in consolidating his power. His decisive victories against the Magyars at the Battle of Lechfeld in 955 marked a turning point. This triumph not only repelled the Magyar threat, but also dramatically enhanced Otto's prestige and solidified his image as a powerful and effective leader. The news of this victory echoed across Europe, strengthening his authority and bolstering the loyalty of his vassals. Otto subsequently used this momentum to quell the remaining Saxon rebellions. The Saxons, initially reluctant to submit to imperial authority, were forced to acknowledge Otto's power after a series of military victories. This military success was skillfully complemented by Otto's political maneuvers. He strategically appointed loyal supporters to key positions in his administration, weaving a network of loyalists who secured his interests across his vast territory. He skillfully manipulated alliances, rewarding loyal vassals with land grants, titles, and influential positions at court. He was a master of the political game, playing his rivals against each other, strategically rewarding loyalties and punishing dissent with brutal efficiency, ensuring that the fragile peace he had established remained intact. The imperial court under Otto became a microcosm of European politics, a place where the great families jostled for influence, where alliances shifted like the sands of the desert, and where the emperor's every move was carefully scrutinized. The elaborate social rituals of court life, the intricate tapestry of relationships, and the relentless power struggles provided a compelling backdrop against which the destinies of three powerful families, Habsburgs, Wittelsbachs, and Hohenzollerns, were played out. The balance of power, once so delicately poised, was now being reshaped by the forceful hand of Otto the Great, a ruler who demonstrated a unique talent for consolidating power, both through military might and the strategic maneuvering of political alliances. His reign marked a period of transformative change, a shifting of power dynamics that would profoundly influence the course of European history for centuries to come. The tentative peace, secured after the initial conflicts, now felt more secure, though the underlying rivalries persisted, lurking beneath the surface of the opulent imperial court like dangerous currents in a seemingly placid sea. The future remained uncertain, yet Otto's shadow loomed large over the political landscape, a powerful reminder of the new balance of power that had been established. Otto's consolidation of power was not a swift, decisive stroke, but a carefully orchestrated campaign waged on multiple fronts. The military victories, while crucial, were merely one piece of a larger, more intricate strategy. His understanding of the delicate balance of power within his vast kingdom allowed him to exploit internal divisions, turning potential rivals into allies through a combination of carrots and sticks. The subjugation of the Saxons, a people renowned for their fierce independence and resistance to centralized authority, exemplifies this approach. The Saxon uprisings were not single, isolated events, but a series of rebellions spanning several years. Each rebellion, fueled by local grievances and opportunistic leadership, tested Otto's resolve and demanded a nuanced response. He couldn't simply crush them with overwhelming force, as such an approach would risk alienating the entire Saxon population and fostering further resentment. Instead, Otto employed a strategy of divide and conquer. He identified and supported Saxon nobles who were willing to cooperate, offering them concessions and privileges in exchange for their loyalty. Simultaneously, he ruthlessly suppressed those who actively resisted, making examples of rebellious leaders to deter others. This strategy extended beyond simple military might. Otto understood the importance of propaganda and the careful crafting of his public image. Victories were meticulously celebrated, fostering a sense of imperial invincibility. Detailed accounts of his triumphs, embellished with heroic narratives and religious justifications, were disseminated throughout the kingdom. These accounts, often disseminated by court poets and chroniclers, portrayed Otto not just as a powerful military leader, but as a divinely appointed ruler, chosen by God to unify and protect the kingdom. This carefully constructed narrative played a crucial role in gaining the support of the population, weakening the moral authority of his opponents, and inspiring a sense of shared national identity. The political landscape was further complicated by the machinations of the three great families, the Habsburgs, the Wittelsbachs, and the Hohenzollerns. Burchard von Habsburg, ever the pragmatist, had initially pledged his allegiance to Otto, but this allegiance was tempered with a healthy dose of self-preservation. He understood the necessity of maintaining a delicate balance between loyalty and autonomy, ensuring that his family's independence remained intact even within the expanding orbit of Otto's imperial power. He continued to cultivate relationships with other influential nobles, creating a network of support that allowed him to maneuver within the court and protect his family's interests. Secret alliances and discreet negotiations became his preferred methods, a testament to his subtle understanding of courtly intrigue. Siegfried of Wittelsbach, on the other hand, proved a more difficult challenge. His initially victorious position had allowed for a certain degree of arrogance, which clashed with Otto's more methodical and calculating style. While outwardly acknowledging Otto's authority, Siegfried secretly harbored ambitions of greater power, nursing resentment and plotting against Otto in clandestine meetings. This simmering discontent was a constant threat, requiring Otto to constantly adjust his strategies and monitor the Wittelsbach's activities closely. The court became a stage for their silent struggle, a carefully choreographed dance of veiled threats and calculated displays of loyalty. Otto, however, remained one step ahead, anticipating Siegfried's moves and skillfully thwarting his plans through subtle acts of manipulation and strategic alliances. The Hohenzollerns, observing the power play between Otto and his rivals, adopted a strategy of calculated neutrality. Conrad, their shrewd leader, understood that their geographical position, strategically nestled between the major power players, demanded careful maneuvering. He avoided entangling alliances, maintaining a tenuous balance by simultaneously playing both sides. He offered token displays of loyalty to Otto, providing the semblance of support, while secretly fostering relationships with other influential nobles who could act as a counterbalance to Otto's influence. This strategic ambiguity allowed the Hohenzollerns to maintain their independence and avoid becoming embroiled in the conflict between the emperor and his rivals. Their position was precarious, a balancing act that required constant vigilance and subtle negotiation. One misstep could have exposed them to the full wrath of Otto's imperial power, or to the vengeance of other powerful families. Otto's consolidation of power extended beyond military victories and political maneuvering. He implemented significant administrative reforms, aiming to create a more unified and efficient government. He established a stronger central authority, weakening the power of regional dukes and counts by appointing loyal officials to key positions throughout his vast realm. This strategy aimed to circumvent the independent power bases of the nobility, consolidating administrative power in the hands of the crown. He standardized laws and taxes, improving the administration of justice and increasing the flow of resources to the imperial treasury. This increased central authority was not achieved without resistance, but Otto's decisive actions, coupled with his reputation for ruthlessness, eventually led to the establishment of a more centralized and efficient system of governance. The economic aspects of Otto's consolidation of power also deserve careful consideration. He focused on strengthening the imperial economy, fostering trade and encouraging the growth of cities. He actively promoted the development of infrastructure, improving roads and waterways to facilitate the movement of goods and people. This investment in infrastructure not only stimulated economic growth, but also enhanced the efficiency of his administration, allowing for better communication and control across his expansive kingdom. The increased prosperity resulting from these policies strengthened the economic power of the empire and provided the resources necessary to fund Otto's military campaigns and lavish court. The transformation of the imperial court in Aachen under Otto's rule was a profound reflection of his ambition and power. What was once a symbol of fragmented authority became a hub of imperial influence. The court's opulence, the lavish feasts, the intricate ceremonies, the grand displays of wealth, served a dual purpose. It served to awe and intimidate potential rivals while simultaneously attracting loyal supporters and attracting skilled administrators and warriors from across Europe. The court's elaborate rituals and complex social dynamics created a stage where alliances were forged and broken, where fortunes were made and lost, and where Otto's immense power was constantly displayed and reinforced. The court's atmosphere was one of both magnificence and tension, a delicate balance of power and intrigue constantly shifting under the watchful gaze of the emperor. Otto's reign was a pivotal moment in the history of the Holy Roman Empire, a testament to his exceptional strategic vision and ruthlessly effective methods. His success in consolidating power laid the groundwork for future emperors, shaping the political and social landscape of Europe for centuries to come. His legacy is a complex one, marked by both military victories and political maneuvering, by moments of great generosity and acts of brutal efficiency. However, there is no doubt that Otto I, the Great, fundamentally reshaped the map of power in 10th century Europe. The fragile peace he established was a reflection of his absolute control. The underlying tensions remained, but beneath the facade of courtly grandeur, the three great families, the Habsburgs, Wittelsbachs, and Hohenzollerns, learned to navigate the new reality of Otto's imperial dominion, a reality defined by his iron will and strategic brilliance. The future of Europe, indelibly marked by his reign, would never be the same. The aftermath of Otto's victories over the Saxons reverberated through the courts of Europe. The whispers of his power, amplified by the carefully crafted narratives of his court chroniclers, reached even the most remote corners of his vast dominion. While the subjugation of the Saxons represented a significant triumph, it also shifted the balance of power, creating new alliances and exacerbating existing rivalries. The three great families, the Habsburgs, the Wittelsbachs, and the Hohenzollerns, found themselves navigating this new landscape with a mixture of trepidation and ambition. Burchard von Habsburg, ever the pragmatist, recognized the changing political winds. His initial allegiance to Otto, born of necessity and a shrewd assessment of the emperor's growing might, now required a more nuanced approach. The fall of the Saxon rebels hadn't simply eliminated a threat, it had elevated Otto to a position of unprecedented power, potentially threatening the autonomy of even the most powerful families. Burchard, therefore, intensified his efforts to build a network of allies, stretching his influence beyond the immediate confines of his ancestral lands. He subtly cultivated relationships with influential bishops and counts, promising support and protection in exchange for their loyalty. His agents moved like shadows through the imperial court, gathering intelligence and weaving a tapestry of clandestine alliances. He frequented the lavish banquets held in Aachen's palace, not merely to partake in the emperor's generosity, but also to gauge the shifting moods and allegiances of the other nobles, subtly probing for weaknesses and potential points of leverage. The grand halls of the palace, with their polished marble floors and soaring vaulted ceilings, became the stage for his silent diplomacy, where hushed conversations and exchanged glances spoke volumes more than any overt declaration of allegiance. His strategy extended beyond the confines of the court. He commissioned the construction of new fortifications on his family's estates, not as a direct challenge to Otto's authority, but as a display of strength, a quiet assertion of his continued independence. The clang of hammers and the rhythmic scrape of stone on stone echoed a silent message. The Habsburgs remained a force to be reckoned with, their power rooted in both their inherited lands and their carefully cultivated network of allies. This quiet display of strength, coupled with his meticulous cultivation of alliances, ensured that the Habsburgs continued to thrive amidst the uncertainties of Otto's expanding empire. Burchard's success lay not in outright defiance, but in his ability to adapt, to maintain his position while expertly navigating the treacherous currents of imperial politics. He understood the delicate balance between deference and independence, a balance he maintained with the precision of a master craftsman. Siegfried of Wittelsbach, however, proved a less adept navigator of these turbulent waters. His initial arrogance, born of past victories and a miscalculation of Otto's strategic depth, had blinded him to the emperor's true capabilities. While outwardly professing loyalty, Siegfried continued to harbor resentment, secretly plotting with other disgruntled nobles who saw Otto's growing power as a threat to their own ambitions. Their clandestine meetings took place in dimly lit taverns, hidden chambers of castles, and secluded forests, shrouded in secrecy. These gatherings, steeped in conspiracy and fueled by resentment, were a constant threat to Otto's authority. The conspirators, a motley crew of ambitious lords and disgruntled knights, shared their grievances, plotting to undermine Otto's power. Their schemes, however, were clumsy, easily anticipated by Otto's vast intelligence network. The contrast between the Habsburg and Wittelsbach approaches was stark. Burchard's subtlety contrasted sharply with Siegfried's clumsy plotting. While Burchard built his alliances through carefully cultivated relationships and strategic partnerships, Siegfried relied on a haphazard collection of disgruntled nobles, his efforts ultimately hampered by a lack of coordination and foresight. Otto, aware of Siegfried's machinations, subtly countered them. He didn't engage in direct confrontation, preferring instead to employ a strategy of divide and conquer, exploiting the internal divisions within Siegfried's coalition. He offered concessions to some of Siegfried's allies, weakening his support base. He spread rumors among the conspirators, sowing discord and suspicion. He leveraged his control over the flow of information, ensuring that the most damaging rumors reached Siegfried's ears first, and ensuring his own image was carefully preserved. The Hohenzollerns, ever astute observers of the political landscape, chose a path of calculated neutrality. Conrad, their astute leader, recognized the precariousness of openly aligning with either Otto or his enemies. His strategy was one of strategic ambiguity, maintaining a tenuous balance by playing both sides against each other. He offered token displays of loyalty to Otto, sending gifts and emissaries to Aachen, while simultaneously cultivating relationships with nobles who were openly critical of the emperor. He skillfully navigated the treacherous currents of courtly life, avoiding any overt displays of defiance that might provoke Otto's wrath, while maintaining a degree of independence. His family's geographical position, nestled between the major power players, was both a blessing and a curse, demanding constant vigilance and subtle negotiation. The court of Aachen, under Otto's rule, became a microcosm of this complex web of alliances and rivalries. The magnificent palace, with its opulent chambers and vast halls, served as the backdrop for a constant power play. Each banquet, each ceremony, each seemingly trivial exchange held layers of meaning, reflecting the shifting sands of alliances and the subtle struggles for power. Otto himself, a master of courtly intrigue, expertly manipulated these dynamics, using his charm and his ruthlessness with equal measure. He rewarded loyalty with lavish gifts and positions of power, while crushing dissent with swift and merciless efficiency. The battles fought on the field of war were but one element in this larger struggle for power. The true battles were waged within the confines of the court, in the hushed whispers of secret meetings, in the carefully chosen words of diplomatic correspondence, in the subtle gestures and glances exchanged across crowded halls. The shifting loyalties of the three great families reflected this complex reality, a reality shaped by both ambition and necessity. The castles, strongholds of power, stood as silent witnesses to the intricate machinations, their sturdy walls echoing the muted sounds of power plays and political maneuvering. Each stone, each turret, each battlement told a tale of shifting alliances, betrayals, and the ever-present threat of war. Otto's reign, therefore, was not simply a period of military conquest, but also a time of intricate political maneuvering, a delicate dance of power played out on the grand stage of medieval Europe. His ability to forge new alliances, while skillfully neutralizing his old enemies, cemented his position as the undisputed ruler of a newly unified kingdom, a kingdom shaped by the iron will of its emperor and the intricate web of alliances and rivalries that characterized his reign. The future, however, remained uncertain, with the seeds of future conflicts sown even amidst the celebrations of Otto's seemingly absolute power. The weight of the crown, however, was not merely a metaphorical burden. For Otto I, it was a physical one, a palpable pressure that bore down on him with each passing day. The meticulously crafted image of the strong, unwavering emperor, meticulously cultivated by his court chroniclers, masked a deep-seated weariness. The constant demands of ruling his vast and newly unified kingdom, the relentless scheming of ambitious nobles, and the ever-present threat of rebellion had taken their toll. The vibrant energy that had once propelled him through countless battles now felt muted, replaced by a pervasive sense of responsibility that weighed heavily on his soul. His nights were often sleepless, filled with the anxieties of leadership. The faces of his enemies, both vanquished and still active, flickered behind his eyelids. He relived past battles, replaying strategic decisions, questioning the choices that led to victory and wondering about the potential consequences of those he hadn't made. The weight of countless lives, lost and saved, settled upon his shoulders, a constant reminder of the price of power. The resplendent court of Aachen, a testament to his triumph, was also a prison of sorts, its opulent halls reflecting not only his glory, but also the immense loneliness of his position. His personal relationships, too, bore the marks of this burden. His wife, Edith of England, a woman of quiet grace and intelligence, often found herself relegated to the sidelines, her wisdom and counsel overshadowed by the pressing demands of state. Their relationship, once vibrant and passionate, had been strained by the ceaseless demands of power. Though she remained a constant source of support, her understanding eyes reflected a shared awareness of the sacrifices that came with Otto's position. Their children, too, bore the weight of their father's absence. The emperor's attention was always diverted, his time consumed by the relentless machinations of courtly life. Their upbringing, as a consequence, was entrusted to tutors and advisors who, while competent, lacked the profound personal connection a parent could provide. The three great families, the Habsburgs, the Wittelsbachs, and the Hohenzollerns, were, in many ways, a microcosm of this personal struggle. His interactions with each family served as a reflection of his internal conflicts and the complexities of his position. Burchard von Habsburg, with his pragmatic approach and careful cultivation of alliances, represented a counterpoint to Otto's own often impulsive nature. The emperor found himself both admiring Burchard's shrewdness and feeling a subtle unease at the Habsburgs' capacity to manipulate political currents. The meticulous planning that lay behind Burchard's actions was a stark contrast to the emperor's frequently intuitive decision-making, and the quiet success of the Habsburg strategy was a constant reminder of the subtle battles waged beneath the surface of courtly life. Siegfried of Wittelsbach, on the other hand, represented the persistent threat of open rebellion. Siegfried's brazen defiance, born of arrogance and a miscalculation of Otto's resolve, forced the emperor to confront the ugly side of his own power, the need to quash dissent swiftly and decisively. Otto's actions against Siegfried were not merely strategic maneuvers, they were a visceral response to the threat posed to his authority, a painful reminder of the precarious nature of his reign. The emperor's ruthlessness towards Siegfried reflected a frustration with his own limitations, a recognition of the fragility of his achievements. Conrad of Hohenzollern, with his deliberate neutrality, mirrored Otto's own internal struggle to balance ruthlessness with diplomacy. Conrad's ability to play both sides against each other highlighted the emperor's own constant need to navigate the treacherous currents of alliances and betrayals. The emperor saw in Conrad a reflection of his own strategic skills, albeit applied in a less confrontational way. This admiration, however, was laced with a subtle distrust, as the Hohenzollerns' calculated ambiguity reminded Otto of the intricate web of loyalties that constantly threatened to unravel his carefully constructed kingdom. The weight of the crown, therefore, wasn't merely a burden of power, it was a crucible in which Otto's personality was constantly tested. The burdens of leadership pushed him to extremes, revealing both his strength and his vulnerabilities. His triumphs on the battlefield were shadowed by the anxieties of his private life. His public image, meticulously crafted and sustained by years of strategic maneuvering, contrasted starkly with his internal turmoil. The court of Aachen, a symbol of his achievement, was also a poignant reflection of the solitude and relentless pressure that defined his life. The intricate dance of diplomacy, the constant scheming of ambitious nobles, and the ever-present threat of rebellion all contributed to the immense weight of the crown, a weight that shaped not only his public persona, but also the intimate details of his personal life, coloring his interactions with his family, his advisors, and even his most powerful enemies. The chronicles of the time depict Otto as a decisive leader, a strong military strategist, and a shrewd political player. These accounts often gloss over the personal sacrifices he made, the internal battles he waged, and the deep-seated anxieties that characterized his reign. They often portray a ruthless and unyielding ruler, capable of swiftly quashing rebellion and maintaining absolute power. However, a deeper look reveals a man burdened by the immense responsibility of his position, a man grappling with the ethical dilemmas inherent in maintaining control and peace in his newly unified kingdom. The personal cost of his achievements is a narrative often lost in the triumphant accounts of his victories, hidden beneath the layers of carefully constructed narratives and political machinations that have shaped his historical legacy. The physical manifestation of this burden went beyond sleepless nights and strained relationships. The crown itself, a symbol of his power and authority, became a constant reminder of the weight of his responsibilities. The heavy gold, encrusted with precious jewels, pressed upon his brow, a physical manifestation of the ceaseless pressures he faced. Each intricate detail, crafted with skill and care, represented not only his imperial status, but also the vastness of his realm and the myriad expectations placed upon him. The crown, therefore, was not just an ornament, it was an embodiment of his life's burden, a tangible representation of the immense weight he carried. It served as a constant reminder of his triumphs, but more importantly, of the ceaseless vigilance required to maintain them. The pressures extended beyond the physical realm. The constant surveillance, the necessity of maintaining a facade of unwavering strength, the need to constantly assess the loyalty of his courtiers, all contributed to a deep-seated sense of isolation. Even within the opulent walls of Aachen's palace, Otto felt a sense of profound loneliness. His interactions with his closest advisors, though often crucial in maintaining order, were often tinged with a sense of mistrust. His relationships with the three great families, while politically advantageous, were fraught with tension and manipulation. The constant need to outmaneuver his opponents and maintain the balance of power left little room for genuine friendship or unburdened companionship. The emperor, even at the height of his power, carried a profound sense of isolation, a lonely burden shared with few. This constant pressure had a profound impact on Otto's demeanor. While public appearances showcased a confident and powerful figure, those closest to him witnessed a gradual change in his character. The jovial emperor, known for his charisma and ability to connect with people, grew increasingly withdrawn, his countenance marked by fatigue and suspicion. His decisions, once driven by a sense of justice and a desire for a stable kingdom, became increasingly influenced by the need to maintain his position. The burden of leadership had, in many ways, reshaped his personality, tempering his impulsiveness with a calculated pragmatism while also fostering a distrust that permeated his relationships. The price of power, for Otto I, was not just a political cost, but a profound personal transformation. The death of Otto I, in 973, marked not an end, but a pivotal turning point. The meticulously crafted edifice of his empire, held together by the force of his personality and the sharp edge of his sword, now faced the inevitable test of time and the ambitions of those who sought to claim a piece of his legacy. The weight of the crown, which had pressed so heavily upon his brow, now passed to his son, Otto II, a young man barely prepared for the complexities of inheriting such a vast and volatile realm. Aachen, the imperial capital, witnessed a subtle but significant shift in atmosphere. The vibrant energy that had once pulsed through its halls, fueled by Otto I's ambitious spirit and the excitement of a newly unified kingdom, began to fade. The court, once a dynamic center of power and intrigue, now found itself navigating a more precarious landscape. The carefully constructed balance of power, so painstakingly maintained by Otto I, began to fray at the edges. The three great families, the Habsburgs, the Wittelsbachs, and the Hohenzollerns, found themselves in a new game, the rules of which were still being written. Burchard von Habsburg, ever the pragmatist, saw in Otto II's youth an opportunity to consolidate his family's influence. He subtly shifted his allegiances, carefully weaving a network of alliances that extended beyond the borders of the empire. His quiet maneuvering, a masterclass in political strategy, laid the foundation for the Habsburgs' rise to prominence in the centuries to come. His patience and strategic foresight were a stark reminder of Otto I's own shrewdness, demonstrating that the lessons learned during the first Otto's reign were far from forgotten. The Wittelsbachs, however, took a different approach. Under the leadership of Siegfried's successor, the family chose a more aggressive path. They sought to exploit the vulnerabilities inherent in a young emperor's rule. This led to a series of minor uprisings and power struggles that tested Otto II's authority and revealed the fragility of his father's carefully constructed peace. These challenges forced Otto II to quickly develop the ruthless decisiveness that had characterized his father, though he often lacked the same level of strategic insight. The early struggles of his reign served as a harsh tutorial in the realities of leadership, a baptism by fire that shaped his character and his approach to rule. Conrad of Hohenzollern, ever the master of calculated ambiguity, continued to walk the tightrope of neutrality. His strategic silence became a potent force, allowing him to influence events without directly engaging in the conflicts that raged around him. He observed the power dynamics shift and adjusted his position accordingly, demonstrating a remarkable adaptability that laid the foundation for the Hohenzollern family's long-term success. His neutrality, a testament to his political acumen, served as a potent reminder that sometimes inaction could be the most powerful tool. Otto II's reign, though shorter than his father's, was marked by significant military campaigns, often driven by the need to reassert imperial authority. He inherited not only his father's crown but also the burden of maintaining control over a vast and diverse empire. His actions were often dictated by the need to put down rebellions and secure his borders, reflecting the challenges faced by any ruler who sought to maintain order in a fragmented political landscape. His campaigns in Italy, particularly, were crucial in asserting his claim to the imperial title and highlighting the complex relationships between the empire and the papacy. The legacy of Otto I extended far beyond the immediate consequences of his reign. His unification of the empire, though fragile, laid the foundation for a lasting entity, however fractured it may have been at times. It was a cornerstone upon which future emperors would build, even as they struggled with the ongoing conflicts and internal pressures that marked the Holy Roman Empire's turbulent history. His military reforms were pivotal in shaping the character of the imperial army, though this too would undergo numerous changes as it adapted to the ever-shifting political landscape. The administrative innovations he introduced laid the groundwork for a more centralized system of governance, and his legal reforms were attempts to create a more consistent and equitable legal framework. Furthermore, Otto I's influence on the three great families was profound and long-lasting. The Habsburgs, under the tutelage of Burchard and his successors, gradually solidified their position within the empire, expertly maneuvering through the complex currents of courtly politics to accumulate power and influence. They learned the value of patience, strategic alliances, and calculated ambiguity, all lessons from Otto I's pragmatic approach. The Wittelsbachs, though initially more aggressive, ultimately learned the limitations of open rebellion and adapted their strategies, becoming crucial players in the ongoing power struggles within the empire. The Hohenzollerns, through their calculated neutrality and adaptability, established themselves as a force to be reckoned with, capable of influencing events from a position of seemingly passive observation. Otto I's reign wasn't merely a period of military victories and political maneuvering, it was a crucible that shaped the future of the Holy Roman Empire for centuries to come. His legacy, forged in fire and blood, was a complex tapestry of triumphs and failures, a story of ambition and adversity that continues to fascinate and inspire debate among historians and students of medieval history alike. The weight of the crown he carried, the burden of leadership he shouldered, became the foundation upon which a dynasty would rise and fall, a testament to the enduring power of a single man's vision and the lasting impact of his decisions. His successors, in inheriting his empire, would grapple with many of the same challenges and tensions which had shaped Otto I's life, constantly balancing the need for unity and stability against the relentless pressures of courtly intrigue and ambitious nobles. The legacy of Otto the Great, therefore, was not a static monument, but a dynamic force, continuously reshaped by the currents of history, a legacy both glorious and profoundly flawed, reflecting the complexities of the man who forged it, and the volatile age in which he lived. His actions, and his inactions, reverberated through the centuries, leaving an indelible mark on the destiny of the Holy Roman Empire and the families who fought for power within it. The story of Otto I, therefore, is not merely a historical narrative, but a timeless exploration of power, ambition, and the enduring legacy of leadership in a turbulent world. His life and his reign provide a powerful case study for understanding how a single leader can shape the fate of an empire, even as the empire, in its turn, shapes the very character of its rulers. The weight of the crown, ultimately, would fall upon many shoulders, each bearing the burden of Otto's legacy, each striving to navigate the treacherous landscape he had created. Chapter 3. The Investiture Controversy. The death of Otto II in 1002, though mourned by some, presented a new opportunity for the simmering tensions between the papacy and the empire to boil over. His young son, Otto III, inherited a crown already heavy with the unresolved conflicts of his father's reign. The precarious balance Otto I had so carefully constructed was further destabilized by Otto II's relatively short and turbulent reign, leaving the empire vulnerable to the ambitions of both secular and ecclesiastical powers. The simmering resentment over imperial interference in church affairs, a long-standing source of friction, threatened to erupt into open conflict. Rome, under the watchful eye of Pope Gregory V, a staunch defender of papal authority, felt the tremors of this impending storm. The grandeur of the papal court, its opulent architecture and intricate rituals, belied the intense political maneuvering occurring behind its gilded walls. Gregory V, a young man imbued with a fierce sense of religious conviction and an unwavering belief in the supremacy of the papacy, was determined to assert the Church's independence from imperial control. His court buzzed with whispers of defiance, with the air thick with the anticipation of a showdown that could redefine the very nature of power in Europe. The Vatican, a symbol of spiritual authority, was also becoming a strategic center of political power, its influence rivaling that of the imperial court. Gregory V, while respectful of tradition, understood that to defend the interests of the Church required a firm hand and an unwavering resolve. Meanwhile, in the imperial palaces, the atmosphere was equally charged. Aachen, the traditional imperial capital, still held its allure, yet the weight of its past glory seemed to amplify the sense of insecurity. Otto III, barely a teenager, was thrust into a role far beyond his years. The three great families, the Habsburgs, the Wittelsbachs, and the Hohenzollerns, watched with keen eyes, sensing an opportunity to reshape the political landscape. Burchard von Habsburg, shrewd as ever, pursued a cautious approach, carefully gauging the winds of change before committing his family's considerable resources to a particular side. The Wittelsbachs, however, were more inclined towards direct action, their ambition burning brighter than their caution. They sought to exploit Otto III's youth, hoping to leverage his inexperience for their own gain. This strategy, however, proved more difficult than anticipated, as the young emperor, although inexperienced, displayed a surprising resilience and a determination to assert his authority. Conrad of Hohenzollern, true to form, maintained a position of calculated ambiguity. His silence, however, was far from passive. He carefully cultivated his relationships, ensuring his family's influence stretched into both the imperial court and the growing sphere of influence around the papacy. His strategy, marked by long-term vision, contrasted with the more immediate aims of the Habsburgs and the Wittelsbachs. He understood that the impending conflict could be harnessed to his advantage, regardless of which side ultimately prevailed. The seeds of the investiture controversy were not planted overnight. They were sown over generations, nurtured by centuries of escalating tensions between the temporal and spiritual realms. The issue was not merely about the appointment of bishops and abbots, it was about the very essence of power, authority, and the balance between the sacred and the secular. The empire claimed the right to appoint church officials, asserting its control over vast estates and resources held by the church. This assertion of power was seen by the papacy as a direct challenge to its own authority and a violation of the Church's divinely ordained right to govern its own affairs. The early years of Otto III's reign were marked by a delicate dance of power. The emperor, despite his youth, attempted to assert his authority, but he lacked the experience and the ruthless decisiveness of his predecessors. His efforts were constantly challenged by the ambitions of powerful nobles and the growing assertion of papal independence. The three great families, caught in the crossfire, found their alliances constantly shifting, their loyalty tested by the demands of both the papacy and the empire. The Habsburgs navigated this turbulent period with their usual calculated pragmatism, leveraging their connections to both sides to maximize their influence. They avoided outright conflict, skillfully preserving their position irrespective of who held the upper hand. The Wittelsbachs, on the other hand, continued their more direct and aggressive approach. Their actions, however, often lacked the finesse required in navigating such complex power dynamics, leaving them vulnerable to backlashes and setbacks. They learned hard lessons about the importance of strategic alliances and the perils of underestimating their opponents, lessons that would shape their strategies in the years to come. The Hohenzollerns, remaining steadfast in their ambiguous neutrality, watched the interplay between the emperor and the pope, carefully calculating their next move. They understood the long game, recognizing that the outcome of the investiture controversy would have profound and long-lasting implications for the balance of power within the Holy Roman Empire and beyond. Their calculated inaction was a strategy in itself, preserving their options and safeguarding their interests irrespective of the evolving political landscape. The increasing tension culminated in a series of dramatic events that escalated the conflict between the papacy and the empire to a breaking point. The issues of simony, the buying and selling of church offices, and lay investiture, the emperor's appointment of church officials, became focal points of the dispute. Each side viewed these practices through their own lens, with the empire seeing them as a matter of maintaining order and control, while the papacy viewed them as corruption and an affront to religious authority. The struggle was not simply a clash of personalities or ambitions, it was a clash of ideologies, a battle between two powerful institutions vying for dominance in a fragmented and fiercely competitive medieval world. The emperors and popes involved understood the gravity of the situation, and their actions were shaped by a complex interplay of religious conviction, political strategy, and personal ambition. The conflict spilled beyond the confines of the court and the cathedral, affecting the lives of countless individuals throughout the empire. The nobles who supported the emperor or the pope found themselves entangled in a web of alliances and rivalries, their fortunes and destinies inextricably linked to the outcome of this great struggle. The religious fervor of the age often fueled the political ambitions, making it difficult to disentangle the sacred from the secular in the conflicts that characterized this period. The investiture controversy was not just a struggle for power, it was a fundamental struggle for the definition of the very nature of authority in medieval Europe. It challenged the established order, exposing the deep fissures within the empire and the church. Its legacy extended far beyond the immediate players, shaping the religious and political landscape of Europe for centuries to come. The conflict continues to be studied by historians and theologians alike, highlighting the complex interplay of religious belief, political ambition, and the enduring struggle for power in shaping the course of history. The seeds of the conflict, sown in the late 10th and early 11th centuries, would continue to blossom into a full-scale war that would shape the religious and political face of Europe for centuries to come. The stage was set, the players were in place, and the clash of crowns was about to begin. The whispers of the investiture controversy, initially a hushed undercurrent in the opulent halls of power, had begun to escalate into a roar that threatened to shatter the fragile peace of the empire. Within the great families, the Habsburgs, the Wittelsbachs, and the Hohenzollerns, the conflict wasn't merely a political chess match, it was a deeply personal and often agonizing struggle that tore at the fabric of their loyalties and family bonds. Burchard von Habsburg, patriarch of his family, found himself at the epicenter of this storm. His customary pragmatism, usually a shield against the turbulent tides of political change, felt insufficient against the force of this escalating crisis. He had always maintained a delicate balance, playing both sides against the middle, ensuring the Habsburgs profited regardless of the outcome. But this time, the stakes were higher, the choices more fraught with consequence. His eldest son, Rudolf, a man of fiery ambition and unwavering loyalty to the empire, saw the conflict as a clear-cut struggle between legitimate authority and papal overreach. He believed that the emperor, however young and inexperienced, held the rightful claim to influence the church's affairs. He advocated for a strong alliance with Otto III, believing it crucial to preserve the empire's unity and power. Rudolf's fervor, however, caused friction within the family. His younger brother, Albert, a man of subtle intellect and a keen understanding of the church's power, argued for a more cautious approach. He saw merit in Gregory V's claims and was deeply concerned by the implications of an open conflict with the papacy. Albert believed that an alliance with the papacy, even at the expense of some imperial concessions, was vital for the long-term security and influence of the Habsburgs. The clash between Rudolf's impassioned loyalty and Albert's calculated pragmatism created a deep rift within the family, one that would resonate for generations to come. Burchard, torn between his son's conflicting loyalties, found himself increasingly isolated, his years of shrewd political maneuvering failing to offer a solution to this uniquely personal crisis. The situation within the Wittelsbach family was even more volatile. Their inherent ambition, untempered by the Habsburgs' cautious pragmatism, had led them down a path of increasingly reckless actions. Their patriarch, a proud and uncompromising man, had openly declared his allegiance to the emperor, believing that Otto III, with the Wittelsbach's support, could regain control of the church and restore the empire to its former glory. This bold stance, however, came at a considerable cost. His unwavering commitment alienated many within his own family. His younger brother, deeply conflicted by the implications of his actions and his growing awareness of the papacy's strength, secretly sought audience with Pope Gregory V, relaying his concerns and offering the Wittelsbachs limited support in return for favorable treatment. This act of betrayal fueled a bitter and lasting feud within the family, leaving deep scars and shaping their future strategies. It proved to be a painful lesson in the complexities of political alliances and the dangers of unchecked ambition. Their rash decision to back Otto III directly, without consideration for potential consequences or the existence of alternative alliances, demonstrated their recklessness. Meanwhile, the Hohenzollerns, masters of calculated ambiguity, continued to play their game of patient observation. Conrad of Hohenzollern, ever the pragmatist, saw the conflict not as a simple battle between the emperor and the pope, but as a vast landscape of opportunities. He had cultivated relationships within both camps, ensuring that regardless of the outcome, the Hohenzollern family would thrive. His daughter, Matilda, possessed a remarkable political acumen, equal to that of her father. She had carefully cultivated a relationship with a member of Gregory V's inner circle, providing the Hohenzollerns with invaluable intelligence on the inner workings of the papacy, information that would greatly assist in their long-term strategic planning. Her delicate maneuvering contrasted with the more overt actions of the other families, showcasing the Hohenzollerns' mastery of subtle diplomacy and long-term strategic thinking. The family's ambiguous stance, however, wasn't without its internal tensions. Conrad's son, Frederick, a man of unwavering religious conviction, chafed under his father's calculated neutrality. He saw the investiture controversy not as a political game, but as a righteous battle between the forces of good and evil. His impassioned belief in the supremacy of the papacy led him to secretly pledge his support to Gregory V, creating a potential conflict of interest between the Hohenzollern family and the empire. This internal division, kept carefully hidden from the outside, hinted at a struggle for succession within the family, a struggle fueled by differing ideologies and interpretations of the unfolding crisis. The moral dilemmas faced by each of these families were profound. The Habsburgs were torn between familial loyalty and political expediency. The Wittelsbachs wrestled with ambition and betrayal. The Hohenzollerns navigated the treacherous waters of neutrality, masking their own internal conflicts beneath a veneer of calm. The investiture controversy wasn't merely a conflict over the appointment of church officials. It was a crucible that tested the very core of these families, exposing their strengths, their weaknesses, and the deeply ingrained flaws in their relationships. The choices they made, born out of ambition, pragmatism, and religious conviction, would shape their destinies, and indeed the destiny of the empire, for centuries to come. The conflict, now far beyond the initial dispute over bishops and abbots, had spread like wildfire, consuming families and creating lasting rifts. The initial stages of the investiture controversy witnessed not only open conflicts, but also secret alliances, betrayals masked by outward shows of loyalty, and devastating personal consequences within the families. Each family, in its own way, mirrored the broader conflict, a struggle between temporal and spiritual power played out on the personal stage. The lines between family and political loyalty blurred, creating an atmosphere of distrust and paranoia, where even the closest relatives could become rivals in the pursuit of power and influence. The weight of these moral choices pressed heavily on the patriarchs and matriarchs, burdening them with decisions that would permanently shape not only their own futures, but also the destinies of their children and grandchildren. The cost of power, played out so vividly within these families, demonstrated the profound sacrifices required to navigate the tumultuous world of medieval European politics. The story of the investiture controversy was not just about kings and popes. It was about families grappling with the human cost of grand ambitions. It was a story of ambition, loyalty, betrayal, and the enduring struggle for power that still resonates through history. The air in the imperial court crackled with an almost palpable tension. The investiture controversy, no longer a simmering dispute, had become a raging inferno consuming everything in its path. While the official pronouncements focused on the rights of emperors to appoint bishops and the pope's claim to spiritual supremacy, the reality was far more nuanced, a tangled web of personal ambitions, shifting alliances, and betrayals cloaked in the language of piety. Burchard von Habsburg, despite his years of navigating the treacherous currents of imperial politics, found himself adrift in this storm, his usual pragmatism rendered useless against the sheer force of religious fervor and political maneuvering. Rudolf, his eldest son, remained steadfast in his loyalty to the emperor, viewing the Pope's claims as a direct threat to the temporal authority of the empire. He saw Gregory V's pronouncements not as theological debates, but as an act of aggression, a blatant attempt to usurp the emperor's rightful power. His fervent belief led him to actively participate in the emperor's court, advising Otto III on strategies to counter the Pope's growing influence. He organized meetings with various princes and bishops who shared his conviction, solidifying the emperor's support base and strengthening his resistance to the papal claims. Rudolf, however, overlooked a crucial aspect of the controversy: the growing discontent among many German princes who saw the emperor's authority as increasingly centralized and tyrannical, irrespective of the papal conflict. His uncompromising stance alienated potential allies, diminishing the emperor's position even further. In contrast, Albert, ever the pragmatist, saw the necessity of a different approach. While he acknowledged the emperor's right to rule, he recognized the escalating danger of alienating the papacy entirely. The Church, with its vast network of influence and power, could not be simply dismissed. He believed that a conciliatory approach, a willingness to negotiate and compromise, would ultimately benefit the Habsburgs in the long run. He secretly corresponded with cardinals sympathetic to the imperial cause, seeking common ground and exploring avenues for reconciliation. Albert's actions, though initially discreet, eventually came to light, adding to the already strained relationship between himself and his brother. This internal conflict within the Habsburg family highlighted the complex nature of the investiture controversy, showing how it impacted not only political alliances, but also the bonds of family. Burchard, caught between his son's diametrically opposed strategies, found himself increasingly burdened, struggling to maintain unity within his own family while facing the tumultuous external conflict. The Wittelsbachs, driven by their insatiable ambition, found themselves embroiled in a crisis of their own making. Their outright support of Emperor Otto III, a decision fueled by the intoxicating pursuit of power and influence, had backfired spectacularly. While initially the emperor's court had embraced their support, the growing dissatisfaction within the empire due to Otto's own policies and the emperor's increasingly erratic behavior resulted in the Wittelsbach's loyalty becoming increasingly problematic. Their initial bold declaration had alienated many within the empire who saw their allegiance as an act of reckless ambition. The Pope, sensing the Wittelsbach's vulnerability, subtly fostered discontent among their vassals and allies. This created a situation where the Wittelsbach's power base eroded rapidly, with the family facing potential rebellion and internal upheaval. The patriarch's unwavering support for the emperor, while initially appearing shrewd, turned out to be a dangerously short-sighted gamble. The situation was further complicated by the younger Wittelsbach brothers' secret negotiations with the papacy. Driven by a combination of fear and pragmatism, he had sought a clandestine alliance with Pope Gregory V, hoping to secure his own branch of the family's future. This act of betrayal, though intended to preserve the family's influence, ultimately created a devastating rift within the family, leading to open conflict and accusations of treachery. The Wittelsbach story, a cautionary tale of unrestrained ambition, illustrated the high cost of political choices, showcasing the fragile nature of power and the insidious consequences of betrayal. The seemingly invincible ambition that had driven their initial actions ended up severely crippling their power base, leaving them vulnerable and deeply divided. The Hohenzollerns, in contrast, maintained their characteristic neutrality, skillfully navigating the turbulent waters of the investiture controversy. Conrad, their patriarch, viewed the conflict not as a moral struggle but as a complex political game, a chess match where the players were powerful emperors and popes, and the stakes were nothing short of the future of the empire. He maintained a delicate balance, offering token support to both the emperor and the pope without fully committing to either side. This calculated ambiguity protected the Hohenzollerns from the potential consequences of openly siding with either party, ensuring that their family would continue to prosper regardless of the outcome. Matilda's subtle diplomacy, her close ties to Gregory V's inner circle, provided the Hohenzollerns with invaluable intelligence, giving them an edge in anticipating and reacting to political shifts. However, this carefully cultivated neutrality was not without its internal frictions. Frederick, Conrad's son, possessed a strong religious conviction that clashed with his father's political pragmatism. He saw the investiture controversy not as a political contest but as a religious war, a struggle between the forces of God and the forces of worldly power. His deep-seated belief in the Pope's authority led him to secretly pledge his allegiance to Gregory V, a secret that further complicated his relationship with his father and created a potentially explosive situation within the Hohenzollern family. The internal conflict reflected a wider tension within the family, showcasing the difficulty of maintaining unity in the face of differing ideologies and interpretations of the unfolding conflict. Frederick's actions underscored the inherent tensions between political realism and religious conviction, a moral dilemma played out on a personal and familial scale, mirroring the broader conflict between the emperor and the pope. The investiture controversy was not merely a conflict between secular and religious authorities, it was a profoundly personal and family-centered struggle. The Habsburgs, Wittelsbachs, and Hohenzollerns, three of the most powerful families in the Holy Roman Empire, found themselves caught in the crossfire, their internal conflicts mirroring the broader struggle between the emperor and the pope. Their actions, driven by ambition, loyalty, betrayal, and religious conviction, shaped the course of history, leaving behind a legacy of enduring power struggles, family feuds, and the undeniable human cost of political maneuvering within the context of religious upheaval. The consequences of their choices, born out of the tumultuous period of the investiture controversy, would resonate for generations to come, shaping the political landscape of Europe and leaving an indelible mark on the history of the Holy Roman Empire. The whispers of this conflict, once confined to the halls of power, echoed down through the centuries, a reminder of the enduring tension between faith and power, and the complex, often devastating, interplay between religious fervor and political ambition. The years following the height of the investiture controversy witnessed a reshaping of the political landscape of the Holy Roman Empire, a transformation profoundly influenced by the choices made by the Habsburgs, Wittelsbachs, and Hohenzollerns. The Habsburgs, once a pillar of imperial authority, found themselves fractured. Rudolf's unwavering loyalty to Otto III, while initially bolstering the emperor's position, ultimately proved a strategic blunder. The emperor's increasingly erratic rule, coupled with Rudolf's uncompromising stance, alienated numerous German princes who saw the emperor's power as increasingly centralized and oppressive, regardless of the papal conflict. The seeds of resentment, sown during the controversy, blossomed into open defiance. Several powerful duchies began to openly question imperial authority, demanding greater autonomy and challenging the very foundation of the Habsburgs' influence. Rudolf's rigid adherence to a failing strategy left the Habsburgs vulnerable, their power base significantly weakened. The once unified front crumbled under the weight of internal divisions and external pressures. Albert's more conciliatory approach, while initially appearing less decisive, proved to be far more effective in the long run. His clandestine negotiations with cardinals sympathetic to the imperial cause yielded subtle but significant results. While he couldn't prevent the immediate fallout of the conflict, his strategy allowed the Habsburgs to retain a degree of influence and maintain some level of credibility within the Church. This diplomatic approach, though slower to produce results, allowed the Habsburgs to weather the storm more effectively than their aggressively loyal brother. The family, though diminished in power, managed to survive the initial fallout of the controversy, preserving a significant portion of their territories and influence, unlike the Wittelsbachs. The Wittelsbachs' downfall was swift and spectacular. Their initial gamble on Otto III's unwavering success proved tragically short-sighted. Their overt support, initially lauded, became a liability as the emperor's popularity waned. The Pope, sensing an opportunity, skillfully exploited this vulnerability. He subtly instigated rebellions amongst their vassals, exploiting existing tensions and grievances to erode their power base. The once powerful Wittelsbachs faced a series of rebellions and internal power struggles, their family fractured by distrust and accusations of treachery. The younger brother's secret negotiations with the papacy, while born from a desire for self-preservation, only hastened their decline. His betrayal exposed the family's internal weaknesses, ultimately resulting in a significant loss of territory and influence. The once ambitious Wittelsbachs found themselves marginalized, their power severely diminished, a cautionary tale of unchecked ambition and misplaced loyalty. The consequence of their gamble was nothing short of catastrophic, leaving them vulnerable and significantly weakened on the political stage. The ensuing conflicts within the family, fueled by suspicion and betrayal, crippled their ability to effectively respond to the shifting political landscape. The loss of their territories, the constant internal strife, left them struggling to maintain their position, a stark contrast to their previous aspirations of imperial dominance. The Hohenzollerns, however, emerged from the investiture controversy relatively unscathed, a testament to their astute political maneuvering. Conrad's carefully cultivated neutrality proved to be a masterstroke. He skillfully balanced his relations with both the emperor and the pope, offering token support to each without fully committing to either side. This approach, although seemingly passive, allowed the Hohenzollerns to avoid the devastating consequences suffered by the other families. They profited from their non-commitment. Their ability to adapt and remain unaligned allowed them to maintain their influence, expand their territorial holdings, and solidify their position as a powerful force in the empire. Matilda's diplomatic prowess further solidified the Hohenzollerns' success. Her close ties to Gregory V's inner circle provided them with crucial intelligence, allowing them to anticipate political shifts and react accordingly. This subtle diplomacy not only protected the family from harm, it provided opportunities for strategic expansion. Her insights were invaluable in navigating the complexities of the period. Her discreet influence allowed them to consistently take advantage of emerging opportunities, consolidating their power while others faltered. The Hohenzollerns' success, in stark contrast to the downfall of the other families, showcased the advantages of calculated neutrality and astute diplomacy. However, even their carefully crafted neutrality wasn't without its internal challenges. Frederick's deep religious convictions clashed sharply with his father's political pragmatism. His secret allegiance to Pope Gregory V created a significant rift within the Hohenzollern family. While his father focused on maintaining the family's stability through political maneuvering, Frederick's devotion to religious principles led to a direct clash of values. This tension, though mostly concealed, created a simmering conflict that threatened to erupt into open conflict. This internal struggle, though not as devastating as the conflicts within the Habsburg and Wittelsbach families, served as a microcosm of the wider tensions that characterized the investiture controversy. It highlights the internal struggles faced even by those families that successfully navigated the broader political upheavals of the period. The consequences of the choices made during the investiture controversy reverberated through generations. The Habsburgs, although weakened, managed to retain their position, though with diminished power. The Wittelsbachs experienced a significant decline, their ambition and loyalty proving to be disastrous. The Hohenzollerns, through calculated neutrality and skillful diplomacy, emerged stronger than ever. These families' experiences serve as a powerful illustration of how political decisions, driven by ambition, loyalty, betrayal, and religious conviction, could shape the destinies of entire dynasties and the future of an empire. The legacy of this turbulent period continued to influence the power dynamics of the Holy Roman Empire for centuries, shaping alliances, fueling rivalries, and ultimately redrawing the political map of Europe. The investiture controversy, far from being a purely theological debate, was a profound human drama, played out on the grand stage of European history, its echoes lingering even in the distant future. The long-term impact of the choices made during this critical period continues to shape the narratives of these prominent families, demonstrating the far-reaching consequences of decisions made amidst intense political and religious upheaval. The lessons of the investiture controversy, therefore, extend beyond its historical context and remain relevant even today, a testament to the enduring power of political maneuvering, the consequences of ambition, and the enduring human cost of conflict. The aftermath of the investiture controversy left the Holy Roman Empire fractured, a mosaic of shifting alliances and resentments. The once clear lines of power, blurred by years of conflict, now resembled a chaotic river delta, with numerous tributaries vying for dominance. The Habsburgs, once a pillar of imperial authority, found themselves navigating treacherous waters. While Albert's cautious diplomacy had preserved a significant portion of their territories, the internal divisions within the family remained a simmering threat. The lingering distrust between Albert and Rudolf, born from their differing approaches to the conflict, cast a long shadow over their future collaborations. Albert, ever the pragmatist, sought to consolidate his power base, focusing on strategic alliances with the smaller, less volatile principalities. He understood that the era of unchecked imperial power was over, and a new equilibrium needed to be forged. This meant navigating a delicate balance between maintaining a semblance of imperial authority and conceding certain levels of autonomy to the increasingly assertive regional princes. Rudolf, on the other hand, remained embittered by the loss of influence. His unwavering loyalty to Otto III, though admirable in its unwavering commitment, had proven a costly mistake. Now, he actively sought to regain the lost prestige of the Habsburgs, often resorting to aggressive tactics that further strained relations with neighboring powers. His military campaigns, while initially achieving minor territorial gains, ultimately served to destabilize the region and solidify the opposition against the Habsburg claim to dominance. The internal conflict within the family threatened to unravel their remaining power. The delicate balance Albert had worked so hard to achieve teetered on the brink of collapse under the pressure of Rudolf's intransigence. The Habsburg lands, once a cohesive whole, were now fragmented, riven with internal disputes that threatened to spill over into open warfare. The Wittelsbachs, having suffered a catastrophic decline, were reduced to a shadow of their former selves. The once powerful dynasty, their ambition having led them to an ill-fated alliance with the emperor, faced a desperate struggle for survival. The betrayal of one brother, revealed only after the dust settled from the conflict, had shattered the fragile unity of the family, exposing its inherent vulnerabilities. Their vassals, sensing weakness, openly rebelled, seizing upon the opportunity to break free from Wittelsbach control. The resulting power vacuum allowed other, more opportunistic families to expand their territories at the expense of the weakened Wittelsbachs. The once opulent castles and estates of the family now stood as stark reminders of their fallen fortunes. The family's scattered remnants attempted to salvage what remained, but the wounds inflicted during the investiture controversy were deep and long-lasting, their once ambitious dreams reduced to a desperate clinging to survival. The very name Wittelsbach became synonymous with failed ambition and misplaced loyalty. The Hohenzollerns, in stark contrast, emerged from the chaos significantly stronger, a testament to their astute political maneuvering and calculated neutrality. Conrad's careful balancing act between the emperor and the pope had paid immense dividends. Their seemingly passive approach had allowed them to avoid the devastating repercussions suffered by the other families, effectively positioning themselves to profit from the resulting power vacuum. Their expansion was not driven by aggressive conquest, but rather by shrewd acquisitions and strategic alliances, solidifying their position as a major player in the shifting political landscape. The carefully cultivated neutrality of the Hohenzollerns allowed them to absorb the territories vacated by the weakening Habsburgs and the collapsing Wittelsbachs, slowly but steadily extending their influence. Matilda's role in this rise to power cannot be underestimated. Her access to the papal court, through her close ties to Gregory V, provided the Hohenzollerns with invaluable intelligence, allowing them to anticipate political shifts and position themselves advantageously. Her subtle diplomatic interventions, unseen by most, were crucial in shaping alliances and securing beneficial agreements. She played a pivotal role in ensuring the family's survival and expansion throughout the tumultuous years following the investiture controversy. Her strategic alliances, carefully forged through years of quiet diplomacy, ensured the steady accumulation of power and influence, solidifying the Hohenzollerns' ascent to become one of the most prominent families in the Holy Roman Empire. However, the Hohenzollerns' triumph was not without its internal tensions. The conflict between Frederick's religious convictions and Conrad's political pragmatism created a persistent undercurrent of friction. Frederick's secret allegiance to Gregory V, driven by his devout faith, was a source of both pride and concern for the family. While his father saw his son's actions as a potential liability, risking the delicate neutrality that was so vital to their survival, Frederick believed his actions were a moral imperative. This clash of ideals, though largely kept within the family, threatened to destabilize their hard-won success. It highlighted the inherent challenges of balancing religious zeal with political pragmatism, a dilemma that would continue to plague the Hohenzollern dynasty for generations to come. The internal struggles, though ultimately less destructive than the open warfare that ravaged the Habsburg and Wittelsbach families, served as a stark reminder that even carefully constructed neutrality could be tested by the intense pressures of religious and political conflict. The years that followed the investiture controversy witnessed a profound reshaping of the political map of the Holy Roman Empire. The decline of the once mighty Wittelsbachs and the internal struggles of the Habsburgs created a power vacuum that the Hohenzollerns, through their shrewd diplomacy and calculated neutrality, expertly exploited. New players emerged, seizing upon the opportunities presented by the prevailing chaos, further complicating the already intricate web of alliances and rivalries. The once dominant families found themselves having to adapt, negotiating for survival in a drastically altered political landscape. The legacy of the investiture controversy reverberated through subsequent generations, influencing the course of history, shaping alliances, and perpetuating long-standing rivalries. The political landscape, once characterized by relatively clear lines of power, now reflected a complex interplay of ambition, loyalty, betrayal, and the enduring influence of religious conviction. The struggles of the Habsburgs, Wittelsbachs, and Hohenzollerns serve as a powerful case study in how the choices made during times of upheaval can profoundly impact the destinies of dynasties and reshape the very fabric of empires. The echoes of the investiture controversy, a profound human drama played out across the grand stage of medieval Europe, continued to resonate for centuries, shaping the political landscape and the destinies of the families who struggled to define their places within its complex aftermath. The lessons learned from this turbulent period remain relevant even today, a reminder of the enduring power of political maneuvering, the potentially devastating consequences of unchecked ambition, and the ever-present human cost of conflict. Chapter 4. The Rise of the Habsburgs. The Habsburgs, though bruised by the investiture controversy, possessed a resilience born of generations spent navigating the treacherous currents of Holy Roman Empire politics. Their seemingly fractured state, a consequence of the internal squabbles between Albert and Rudolf, was far from a sign of terminal decline. Instead, it represented a crucial phase in their evolution, a period of strategic recalibration that would ultimately propel them to unprecedented heights. Albert, the elder brother, possessed a shrewd political mind, understanding the need to consolidate power not through brute force, but through carefully constructed alliances and strategic marriages. His vision extended beyond the immediate concerns of territorial gain. He saw the long game, recognizing the power of dynastic connections in a world where loyalty often shifted with the winds of political expediency. He began by securing the allegiances of smaller, less powerful principalities, promising protection and offering advantageous trade agreements. He understood that consolidating a fragmented power base was a far more effective strategy than launching costly military campaigns that only served to provoke further opposition. His quiet diplomacy, often conducted through well-placed emissaries and meticulously crafted letters, built a network of support that extended far beyond the traditional boundaries of the Habsburg territories. Rudolf, though initially resistant to his brother's cautious approach, eventually came to appreciate the wisdom behind it. His own military exploits, though initially promising, had proven to be ultimately unsustainable. The constant drain on resources, coupled with the resentment they generated among neighboring powers, had demonstrated the limitations of a purely military strategy in the fragmented landscape of the post-investiture controversy era. He learned, albeit slowly and somewhat grudgingly, that true power lay not in conquering territories, but in controlling the flow of influence within the empire. This shift in approach led to a surprising degree of cooperation between the brothers. Albert's strategic alliances were supplemented by Rudolf's military expertise, albeit deployed with greater caution and selectivity. They began to focus on strategic marriages, recognizing the potential of binding powerful families to the Habsburg cause through the bonds of kinship. Their daughters and sons became pawns, not in a game of brute power, but in a subtle game of dynastic chess. Each marriage was carefully calculated, aimed at solidifying existing alliances or forging new ones, extending the Habsburg influence across the empire. One such crucial marriage was that of Albert's daughter, Agnes, to a powerful count from the Rhineland. This alliance secured vital access to lucrative trade routes, and placed the Habsburgs in a position to exert considerable influence on the region's political affairs. It was a masterstroke of political maneuvering, a testament to Albert's strategic vision and his understanding of the subtle dynamics of power within the Holy Roman Empire. Agnes, far from being a passive participant in this strategy, proved to be a shrewd political operator in her own right, using her charm and intelligence to foster loyalty and secure advantages for her family. Similarly, Rudolf's son, Frederick, married into a wealthy family in Swabia, further extending the Habsburg reach into the southern regions of the empire. This union brought not only significant wealth but also access to important mineral resources, crucial for fueling the Habsburg military and economic ambitions. The Habsburgs, traditionally known for their military prowess, now began to showcase a far more sophisticated understanding of economic power, recognizing that wealth generated through trade and resource control was just as important, if not more so, than military conquest. The Habsburg family's success wasn't solely reliant upon marriages. Albert, recognizing the importance of cultivating relationships within the church, established strong ties with various bishops and abbots, securing their support and furthering their influence within the ecclesiastical hierarchy. This wasn't merely a matter of religious piety. It was a clever strategy to enhance their political standing and undermine the influence of rival families who were struggling to secure the same support. This careful cultivation of relationships within the church also ensured them access to crucial information, giving them a significant advantage in the increasingly complex game of imperial politics. The Habsburgs also embarked on a significant program of infrastructure development, recognizing the vital role of trade routes and improved communication networks in consolidating their power. They invested heavily in the construction and maintenance of roads, bridges, and fortified settlements, boosting economic activity and improving their control over their extensive territories. This infrastructure development was not just a matter of economic pragmatism, it also served as a powerful symbol of their authority, visibly demonstrating their commitment to the prosperity and security of their lands. The improvements also eased the flow of goods and people, consolidating their hold over the region and strengthening their control over the resources within it. Despite their success, the Habsburgs were not immune to internal conflicts. The lingering tension between Albert and Rudolf, though mitigated by their shared ambition and the success of their joint strategies, never fully disappeared. Their differing approaches to governance, their varying views on the role of the military, and the occasional clash of personalities provided an ever-present undercurrent of friction, reminding observers that even the most formidable dynasties were vulnerable to the destructive forces of internal division. However, their willingness to set aside personal differences for the sake of the greater good of their family helped them to overcome this friction. Their shared ambition served as a powerful unifying force, binding them together even when faced with conflicts. The rise of the Habsburgs was not solely a tale of military might or cunning political maneuvering. It was a story of adaptability, strategic foresight, and a relentless pursuit of power through a combination of military strength, strategic alliances, and the shrewd deployment of dynastic influence. The investiture controversy had shaken the foundations of the Holy Roman Empire, and in its wake, a new breed of powerful families emerged, eager to exploit the ensuing chaos. The Habsburgs, initially appearing vulnerable and fragmented, demonstrated their unique ability to navigate this volatile political landscape, proving that their ambition and resilience were far stronger than their internal divisions. The strategic marriages, the carefully cultivated alliances, and the shrewd economic policies laid the groundwork for their future dominance. Their story is not just of the rise of a family, but a testament to the enduring power of carefully planned ambition and adaptability in a period of immense change. The foundations laid in this era would set the stage for centuries of Habsburg influence in the heart of Europe. The consolidation of Habsburg power wasn't solely a matter of shrewd political marriages and quiet diplomacy. While these tactics proved invaluable in securing alliances and extending their influence across the fragmented territories of the Holy Roman Empire, military victories, albeit carefully chosen and strategically deployed, played a crucial role in solidifying their dominance. Albert, despite his preference for diplomacy, understood the enduring power of a well-timed military intervention. He wasn't interested in large-scale, protracted wars that drained resources and alienated potential allies. Instead, he favored swift, decisive actions that maximized impact while minimizing collateral damage. His military campaigns were characterized by precision and efficiency. He meticulously planned his strategies, carefully selecting his targets and ensuring that his forces possessed a clear numerical and tactical advantage before engaging the enemy. This meticulous approach minimized casualties and maximized the impact of each victory, further enhancing his reputation as a shrewd and capable leader. He concentrated on securing key strategic locations, important trade routes, resource-rich territories, and fortified cities that served as vital hubs of communication and control. By gaining control of these strategic points, the Habsburgs were not just acquiring territory, they were gaining leverage, enhancing their control over the flow of resources and information throughout the empire. One such strategic victory was the capture of the important city of Graz in Styria. This city, situated at a vital crossroads, controlled access to critical trade routes connecting the northern and southern parts of the empire. Its seizure wasn't achieved through a massive siege, but through a cunning combination of strategic alliances and swift military action. Albert forged an alliance with a disaffected noble family within the city, who, frustrated with the existing rulers, agreed to assist the Habsburgs in a clandestine operation. Under the cover of darkness, a small, highly trained Habsburg force, aided by their allies within the city walls, infiltrated Graz, swiftly seizing control of key buildings and disabling any significant resistance. The speed and precision of this operation minimized bloodshed and sent a powerful message to other potential rivals. The victory at Graz wasn't simply about territorial gain, it was about securing control of vital trade routes and projecting Habsburg power across a wider region. The city quickly became a center of Habsburg administration and military might, enhancing their influence over the surrounding territories. News of this victory spread rapidly, bolstering the reputation of the Habsburgs as a formidable force to be reckoned with. It demonstrated their ability to effectively exploit internal divisions amongst their rivals, showcasing a level of political cunning that was as crucial as their military proficiency. This success was followed by other carefully selected military interventions. Rudolf, initially hesitant to abandon his more aggressive military tactics, came to appreciate the value of Albert's calculated approach. He began to focus on targeted military actions, supporting his brother's diplomatic efforts with well-timed displays of military might. This created a synergistic effect, bolstering the effectiveness of both their military and diplomatic strategies. They understood that the threat of Habsburg military action could be as powerful, if not more so, than the actual deployment of troops. This realization allowed them to negotiate from a position of strength, securing favorable terms in agreements and alliances. The Habsburgs' military successes weren't simply about brute force, they were about careful planning, strategic alliances, and exploiting weaknesses in their opponents. They consistently aimed to minimize casualties and maximize the impact of their military actions, understanding the importance of maintaining a positive public image and avoiding actions that could alienate potential allies. Their victories served as powerful propaganda, enhancing their prestige and reinforcing their reputation as capable and decisive rulers. This reputation was carefully cultivated through a network of agents and emissaries who spread news of their successes, often embellishing accounts to further enhance their impact. Furthermore, the Habsburgs understood the importance of maintaining a strong and well-equipped army. They invested heavily in military training, equipment, and logistics, ensuring their forces were well prepared for any contingency. This wasn't solely a matter of offensive capability, it was also a matter of defensive strength, ensuring the protection of their territories and maintaining their ability to respond effectively to any threats. Their military strength acted as a deterrent, preventing potential rivals from challenging their authority and ensuring the stability of their growing empire. They also understood the importance of maintaining discipline within their ranks, preventing internal conflict and ensuring the loyalty and effectiveness of their troops. This meticulous attention to the military was as crucial as their diplomatic efforts, creating a robust and resilient foundation for their growing power. The consolidation of Habsburg power wasn't a linear progression. It was a complex process fraught with internal conflicts, external threats, and shifting alliances. The relationship between Albert and Rudolf, while collaborative, was never without tension. Their differing personalities and approaches to governance occasionally led to clashes, reminding us that even the most successful dynasties were susceptible to internal divisions. However, their shared ambition and the undeniable success of their combined strategies kept these differences from derailing their overall objective. They learned to compromise, adapting their strategies to accommodate each other's strengths and mitigate each other's weaknesses. This internal flexibility, paired with their external adaptability, proved to be a significant factor in their success. The Habsburg rise, therefore, was a symphony of military precision, shrewd diplomacy, and calculated risk-taking. They didn't simply conquer, they strategically secured their influence through a combination of force and finesse, building upon each success to further solidify their grip on power. Their success wasn't accidental, it was the result of meticulous planning, a profound understanding of imperial politics, and an unwavering commitment to the long-term goal of establishing the Habsburgs as the dominant force in the Holy Roman Empire. Their story stands as a compelling example of how a combination of military strength and sophisticated political maneuvering can transform a relatively minor family into a European superpower. The seeds of their future dominance were sown in this period, a testament to their ambition, adaptability, and relentless pursuit of power. The seemingly unshakable ascent of the Habsburgs was, however, far from a smooth trajectory. Beneath the veneer of carefully orchestrated victories and strategic alliances simmered a cauldron of internal conflicts and familial tensions that threatened to unravel their carefully constructed edifice of power. The relationship between Albert and Rudolf, though outwardly collaborative, was a complex tapestry woven with threads of ambition, rivalry, and begrudging respect. Their contrasting personalities, Albert, the pragmatic diplomat, and Rudolf, the more impulsive warrior, often led to friction, generating disagreements over strategy and resource allocation. While Albert favored swift, decisive military actions coupled with shrewd diplomacy, Rudolf, inheriting a more bellicose tradition from previous generations, sometimes chafed under his brother's cautious approach. He yearned for more expansive conquests, less concerned with the meticulous planning and calculated risks that defined Albert's strategy. These disagreements weren't always openly confrontational, they often manifested as subtle power plays within the court, a silent battle waged through patronage, appointments, and the careful cultivation of alliances among the numerous nobles who sought favor with the rising Habsburg dynasty. The whispers of court intrigue, the subtle shifting of alliances, and the maneuvering for influence created a constant undercurrent of tension that threatened to undermine their collective efforts. One such instance of internal friction centered on the allocation of resources. Albert, prioritizing the consolidation of their existing territories and the strengthening of their administrative infrastructure, favored investing in infrastructure projects, the improvement of their army's logistics, and the development of a more efficient system of taxation. Rudolf, on the other hand, advocated for a more aggressive military expansion, arguing that the acquisition of new territories and the subjugation of rival noble houses was essential to securing their long-term dominance. These disagreements over resource allocation often led to protracted debates within the Habsburg Council, delaying crucial decisions and sometimes creating opportunities for their rivals to exploit their internal divisions. The internal challenges weren't limited to the relationship between Albert and Rudolf. The Habsburg family, like many noble houses of the era, was characterized by a complex web of familial relationships, rivalries, and competing interests. The numerous branches of the family, each with their own ambitions and aspirations, sometimes clashed over inheritance, titles, and influence within the court. The struggle for power extended beyond the immediate family, encompassing a wider network of relatives, in-laws, and loyal supporters, all vying for a piece of the growing Habsburg pie. Intrigue and backstabbing were not uncommon, with whispers of conspiracies and betrayals echoing through the corridors of power. The Habsburgs, however, proved remarkably adept at managing these internal challenges. Despite their differences, Albert and Rudolf shared a common ambition: the establishment of the Habsburgs as the preeminent power in the Holy Roman Empire. This overriding ambition served as a powerful unifying force, preventing their internal conflicts from spiraling into open warfare. They learned to compromise, adapting their strategies to accommodate each other's strengths and mitigating each other's weaknesses. Albert's diplomatic skills complemented Rudolf's military prowess, creating a synergistic effect that amplified their overall effectiveness. Their ability to balance their internal divisions while presenting a united front to their external rivals was a crucial factor in their success. Furthermore, the Habsburgs cultivated a loyal network of supporters, both within the court and amongst the wider nobility. They strategically distributed patronage, titles, and land to secure the loyalty of key individuals and families, creating a complex network of alliances that helped to maintain stability within their domain. They understood the importance of rewarding loyalty and punishing treachery, ensuring that their supporters remained steadfast in their allegiance. This carefully cultivated network of loyalists acted as a buffer against internal dissent, providing a counterbalance to the ambitions of rival factions and consolidating their power base. The Habsburg rise wasn't solely dependent on internal cohesion. It also required astute navigation of the complex political landscape of the Holy Roman Empire. The empire was a fragmented entity, a mosaic of independent principalities, duchies, and free cities, often locked in conflict with one another. The Habsburgs shrewdly exploited these divisions, forging alliances with strategically important noble houses, leveraging internal conflicts to their advantage, and offering support to those who pledged allegiance to their growing power. Their diplomatic efforts were as crucial as their military victories, building a web of loyalties and alliances that provided a protective shield against external threats. Their success wasn't just about brute force or cunning diplomacy. It was about building relationships, understanding the intricacies of feudal society, and cultivating a reputation for reliability and trustworthiness. The Habsburgs invested significant resources in cultivating a positive public image, disseminating propaganda that portrayed them as just, benevolent, and divinely favored rulers. They patronized the arts, commissioned grand architectural projects, and supported religious institutions, all of which contributed to enhancing their prestige and legitimacy. The constant shifting alliances and power struggles within the Holy Roman Empire presented numerous challenges. Rival noble houses, jealous of the Habsburgs' growing power, frequently formed coalitions to oppose them. These coalitions, while sometimes formidable, were often undermined by internal divisions and conflicting ambitions among their members. The Habsburgs patiently waited for opportunities, exploiting weaknesses in their rivals' alliances and deftly turning their opponents against one another. The challenge wasn't merely limited to political maneuvering. Economic factors also played a crucial role. The Habsburgs needed to maintain a stable economy to finance their ambitious military campaigns and expansive building projects. They implemented effective systems of taxation, encouraged trade, and carefully managed their finances. They also invested in infrastructure, improving roads, bridges, and waterways to facilitate trade and communication throughout their territories. This combination of shrewd financial management and infrastructure investment played a vital role in their consolidation of power. In conclusion, The Habsburg rise to prominence was not a simple tale of military conquest, but a complex narrative of careful planning, strategic alliances, adept political maneuvering, and the ability to overcome internal divisions. Their success was a testament to their resilience, adaptability, and their ability to balance military strength with diplomatic finesse. Their story serves as a powerful reminder that even the most powerful dynasties faced significant internal and external challenges, but it was their capacity to navigate these challenges with skill and determination that ultimately secured their dominance. The carefully constructed edifice of Habsburg power was built upon a foundation of both internal harmony and external strength, demonstrating the critical interdependence of these often conflicting forces. Their story stands as a compelling example of how long-term vision, strategic adaptation, and an unwavering commitment to ambition could transform a relatively minor family into a European power. The consolidation of Habsburg power wasn't a sudden eruption, but a meticulously orchestrated campaign spanning decades, built upon the foundations laid by earlier generations. Their lands, initially a patchwork of territories scattered across the empire, gradually coalesced into a formidable and increasingly unified domain. The process involved not just military conquest, though that certainly played a significant role, but also astute diplomacy, shrewd financial management, and the cultivation of a carefully constructed network of loyalties and alliances. The geographical diversity of their holdings presented both challenges and opportunities. The rugged mountainous regions of Tyrol, with their strategically important passes and fortified castles, provided a natural defense against external threats. The fertile plains of Austria, rich in agricultural resources, served as the economic heartland of the dynasty, supporting the Habsburgs' growing military and administrative apparatus. The strategically situated territories in Burgundy, acquired through marriage and skillful negotiation, provided access to lucrative trade routes and a significant influx of wealth. This diverse portfolio of lands, however, also required careful management. Different regions had their own customs, laws, and loyalties, requiring the Habsburgs to adopt a nuanced and adaptable approach to governance. They couldn't simply impose a uniform system of rule. Instead, they had to navigate the complexities of local politics, respecting established traditions while gradually asserting central authority. This process of unification and consolidation began with the systematic strengthening of administrative structures. Albert, with his pragmatic approach, spearheaded this crucial element of Habsburg expansion. He implemented reforms aimed at streamlining the bureaucracy, creating more efficient systems of taxation, and standardizing legal procedures across their territories. He appointed trusted officials, often from within the ranks of the rising middle class, shrewdly bypassing the entrenched power of the traditional nobility in some instances, to oversee the administration of different regions, ensuring that his orders were faithfully executed. This created a sense of consistency and order across the Habsburg lands, essential for promoting trade and economic growth. The standardization of weights, measures, and coinage, though seemingly mundane, played a critical role in facilitating trade and economic integration across their diverse territories. Previously, the variations in these measures across different regions had created significant barriers to commerce, increasing transaction costs and hindering economic growth. By standardizing these elements, Albert fostered a more unified and prosperous economic environment within the Habsburg domains, strengthening the dynasty's financial position and providing a stable base for future expansion. The improvement of infrastructure, particularly roads, bridges, and waterways, also contributed to economic integration and the consolidation of Habsburg power. Enhanced communication and transportation networks fostered trade, facilitated the movement of troops, and enabled the swift transfer of information across the empire. Investments in these projects showcased the Habsburgs' commitment to improving the lives of their subjects and fostered a sense of shared identity and purpose among the disparate populations under their rule. These improvements not only facilitated the movement of goods and services, but also strengthened the loyalty and trust of the populace towards the Habsburg dynasty. Military strength remained a cornerstone of Habsburg strategy. While Albert prioritized diplomatic solutions and administrative reforms, Rudolf's military aptitude ensured that the Habsburgs retained a powerful and well-equipped army. Rudolf undertook several military campaigns, consolidating the Habsburgs' hold over existing territories and gradually expanding their influence. These campaigns, though not always flawlessly executed, demonstrated the Habsburgs' military prowess and willingness to use force when necessary to protect their interests and expand their territories. He ensured that the army was well supplied, well trained, and well led, capable of effectively suppressing rebellions and confronting external threats. But military victories alone weren't sufficient. The Habsburgs understood the importance of managing internal and external alliances. They skillfully navigated the complex web of relationships among the various princely families of the Holy Roman Empire. By strategically forging alliances, providing support to allies, and effectively countering their rivals, they deftly maneuvered through the turbulent political landscape of the era. Their diplomatic efforts were particularly crucial in mitigating potential threats and exploiting opportunities for expansion. The Habsburgs didn't simply rely on force. They strategically used alliances, diplomacy, and even marriages to consolidate their influence and minimize potential opposition. The acquisition of new territories wasn't just about expanding their geographical footprint, it was also about securing essential resources, enhancing their economic power, and establishing strategic military advantages. Each new acquisition was carefully considered, assessed for its economic viability, strategic importance, and its potential to strengthen the Habsburgs' overall position within the empire. The Habsburgs displayed an understanding of the long-term strategic implications of their territorial acquisitions, demonstrating their long-sighted approach to consolidation of power. The Habsburgs' commitment to cultivating a positive public image was vital to their success. They patronized the arts, commissioning magnificent works of architecture, supporting religious institutions, and fostering a sense of cultural unity across their diverse territories. This strategy was not just about ostentation but served a practical purpose. It strengthened their legitimacy and secured the loyalty of their subjects. A strong and respected dynasty was less vulnerable to internal and external challenges. Their patronage of the arts and their support for religious institutions enhanced their prestige and instilled a sense of loyalty and unity within their domains. The consolidation of Habsburg power wasn't a linear progression, it was marked by periods of tension, internal conflict, and external threats. But through skillful management of resources, the shrewd application of diplomatic skills, and an unwavering commitment to the long-term vision of building a powerful and unified dynasty, they managed to overcome these challenges. Their strategic alliances, carefully planned military campaigns, and astute political maneuvers cemented their position as one of the preeminent families within the Holy Roman Empire, setting the stage for their future dominance on the European continent. Their story showcases the intricate interplay of military strength, strategic diplomacy, skillful governance, and economic prosperity, all essential elements in their remarkable ascent to power. The Habsburgs' rise wasn't just a testament to their ambition, but also a compelling example of how a dynasty could successfully navigate the complexities of medieval politics, solidify internal strength, and establish a lasting legacy of power and influence. The seeds of Habsburg dominance, sown over generations of shrewd marriages, calculated alliances, and strategic conquests, finally blossomed into a new era. The carefully constructed edifice of power, built upon the foundations of administrative reform, military prowess, and astute diplomacy, now stood tall, casting a long shadow across the political landscape of the Holy Roman Empire. The death of Emperor Maximilian I in 1519 marked a pivotal moment, not an ending, but a transition to a new phase of Habsburg ascendancy. His grandson, Charles V, inherited a legacy of unparalleled scope and complexity. Charles inherited not only the Habsburg lands in Austria, but also the vast Burgundian inheritance, including the Netherlands and Franche-Comté, territories rich in trade and resources. Beyond this, the Spanish crown, with its American colonies brimming with gold and silver, further amplified the Habsburg Empire's wealth and influence. This unprecedented concentration of power placed Charles at the center of European politics, a position he wielded with both ambition and a cautious pragmatism honed by generations of Habsburg experience. His reign would witness both the apex of Habsburg power and the seeds of future challenges. The sheer scale of Charles's empire posed immense logistical and administrative hurdles. The vast distances separating his domains, the diverse cultures and languages of his subjects, and the constant pressure from rival powers demanded a masterful approach to governance. Charles, though inheriting a strong foundation, had to adapt and refine the Habsburg administrative model to manage such a sprawling empire. He relied heavily on a network of trusted advisors and officials, carefully balancing the interests of different regions and preventing the emergence of powerful local factions that could challenge his authority. The religious upheaval of the Reformation presented a particularly significant challenge to Charles's reign. The spread of Protestantism across parts of his empire threatened to fracture the religious unity that had, to a large extent, underpinned the Habsburgs' political authority. Charles, a devout Catholic, saw the Reformation not only as a theological threat, but also as a potential source of political instability that could unravel his carefully constructed empire. His response was multifaceted, combining military force, political maneuvering, and attempts at religious reconciliation. The Diet of Worms in 1521, where Martin Luther was condemned as a heretic, marked the beginning of Charles's determined efforts to suppress the Protestant movement. However, the sheer scale of the religious ferment across Europe, and within the Habsburg territories themselves, made complete suppression impossible. Charles's military campaigns against Protestant princes, such as the Schmalkaldic War, yielded mixed results. While he achieved temporary military victories, he failed to completely eradicate Protestantism. The war drained his resources and fueled further resentment among his Protestant subjects. Recognizing the limitations of purely military solutions, Charles also engaged in diplomatic initiatives aimed at reconciliation. The Augsburg Interim of 1548 was an attempt to bridge the divide between Catholics and Protestants, offering a compromise on certain theological issues. However, this compromise proved unsatisfactory to both sides, ultimately failing to resolve the religious conflict that continued to destabilize his vast empire. The Habsburg strategy for maintaining control had to continuously adapt to the shifting religious landscape, making Charles's reign a testament to the intricate dance between religious belief, political power, and military might. Beyond the religious conflicts, Charles faced significant external pressures. The rising power of France under Francis I and Henry II presented a persistent threat to Habsburg interests, leading to protracted wars and costly military campaigns. These conflicts not only drained the Habsburg treasury, but also diverted resources and attention away from internal affairs. Charles's ambitious pursuit of imperial glory also strained the resources of his vast empire, leading to discontent and rebellion in some regions. Despite the challenges, Charles's reign solidified the Habsburg position in Europe. His strategic marriages, such as the marriage of his son Philip II to Mary I of England, expanded Habsburg influence and created powerful alliances. These matrimonial alliances served not only to expand Habsburg territorial possessions and political power, but they also created intricate family ties that strengthened his position amongst rival European dynasties. Through strategic alliances and marriages, Charles skillfully maneuvered the complex web of European politics, securing vital partnerships while countering the ambitions of his rivals. The management of finances was crucial in sustaining the Habsburg Empire's enormous scale. Charles implemented reforms aimed at improving the efficiency of tax collection and the management of the royal treasury. However, the costs associated with constant warfare and the vast administrative expenses of a multinational empire placed a significant strain on his financial resources. The influx of wealth from the American colonies helped, but it was not sufficient to completely offset the massive expenses of governing such a sprawling territory. Charles V's reign highlights the complexities of wielding immense power. His achievements were substantial, consolidating the Habsburg territories, expanding their influence, and shaping European politics for generations to come. Yet, his reign was also marked by constant challenges, religious wars, external conflicts, and the ever-present strain on resources. His legacy was one of both grandeur and frustration, a testament to the enduring power of the Habsburg dynasty and the precarious nature of maintaining a vast, multifaceted empire. The abdication of Charles V in 1556 marked a significant turning point in Habsburg history. He divided his vast empire, leaving the Spanish monarchy and its American colonies to his son Philip II, and the Austrian Habsburg lands to his brother Ferdinand I. This division, driven partly by pragmatic considerations and partly by the sheer weight of governing such a vast empire, had long-lasting consequences for the future of the Habsburg dynasty. The division created two distinct branches of the Habsburg family, each with its own unique challenges and opportunities. The Spanish Habsburgs, under Philip II, continued to play a significant role in European politics, but their focus shifted towards maintaining control over their expansive overseas empire and navigating the religious conflicts that raged across Europe. The Austrian Habsburgs, under Ferdinand I, consolidated their power within the Holy Roman Empire, becoming increasingly influential in the internal politics of the empire and seeking to maintain a balance of power in Central Europe. The division of the empire, while creating separate branches of the family, didn't diminish the overall Habsburg influence. The two branches, despite their distinct geographical focus, maintained a sense of family unity and cooperation, often supporting each other in times of need. The legacy of Charles V and the subsequent reigns of Philip II and Ferdinand I shaped the future course of European history, highlighting the enduring power and influence of the Habsburg dynasty for centuries to come. The sophisticated interplay of diplomacy, marriage alliances, and carefully targeted military campaigns continued to consolidate Habsburg power throughout Europe, leaving behind an empire that, even in its division, continued to shape the destiny of nations. The Habsburg legacy is not one of simple conquest, but rather a complex tapestry woven from threads of political maneuvering, religious conflict, economic ingenuity, and an unwavering commitment to the perpetuation of dynastic power. Chapter 5: The Reformation and its Impact. The air hung heavy with a simmering discontent, a quiet rebellion brewing beneath the veneer of established order. For centuries, the Catholic Church had held sway over the lives of Europeans, its authority unquestioned, its doctrines ingrained in the very fabric of society. But the seeds of dissent were already sown, taking root in the fertile ground of intellectual ferment and economic hardship. The extravagant displays of wealth by the church hierarchy, starkly contrasting with the poverty of the masses, fueled resentment and sparked whispers of corruption. The sale of indulgences, promises of forgiveness for sins in exchange for monetary contributions, was a particularly sensitive point, seen by many as a blatant exploitation of religious piety for personal gain. This simmering discontent was not limited to the peasantry. Among the educated elite, a growing unease with the Church's doctrines and practices was gaining momentum. The Renaissance, with its renewed emphasis on classical learning and humanism, had challenged the Church's monopoly on knowledge and truth. Scholars began to question long-held beliefs, scrutinizing scripture and church tradition with a critical eye. The invention of the printing press, a technological marvel of the era, played a pivotal role in disseminating these dissenting voices, allowing reformers' ideas to spread rapidly across Europe, bypassing the Church's traditional control over information. Pamphlets and books, once rare and expensive, became increasingly accessible, fueling the flames of religious debate and sparking a wave of intellectual and religious upheaval. The three families, the Habsburgs, the Valois, and the Tudors, found themselves at the epicenter of this religious maelstrom. Each dynasty, with its own unique political and religious landscape, grappled with the implications of the Reformation in distinct ways. The Habsburgs, staunch defenders of Catholicism, saw the rise of Protestantism as a direct threat to their imperial authority. Charles V, inheritor of a vast and diverse empire, faced the daunting task of maintaining religious unity, while simultaneously dealing with a complex web of political challenges and external threats. His reign would be marked by constant warfare, diplomatic maneuvering, and a tireless effort to contain the spread of Protestantism within his domains. In France, the Valois monarchy, while officially Catholic, also found its authority challenged by the growing influence of Protestant ideas. The Huguenots, as French Protestants were known, gained a considerable following, particularly among the nobility and urban populations. Religious tensions in France escalated, culminating in decades of brutal civil wars, shattering the nation's fragile peace and leaving a legacy of violence and bitterness. The French monarchy, unlike the Habsburgs, adopted a more nuanced approach, attempting at times to coexist with the Protestants and even employing them within their ranks. The strategic positioning of Protestant enclaves across France created a complex tapestry of allegiance and opposition that forced the French crown to navigate the religious divisions strategically, rather than simply crush the opposition with force. Across the English Channel, Henry VIII's break from Rome and the establishment of the Church of England represented a unique approach to the religious crisis. Fueled by a desire for a male heir and a ruthless ambition for power, Henry's decision to sever ties with the papacy transformed the religious landscape of England forever. The English Reformation, unlike its continental counterparts, was driven more by political expediency than theological conviction, resulting in a complex religious situation marked by both reform and a high degree of royal control over the Church's affairs. The establishment of the Church of England, while initially driven by personal ambition, ultimately laid the groundwork for a long-term struggle between the crown and religious factions vying for control over England's destiny. The social and economic consequences of the Reformation were far-reaching. The monasteries, once centers of charity and education, were dissolved, causing widespread disruption and displacement. Religious iconoclasm, the destruction of religious images and symbols, became common, leading to violence and unrest in many areas. The spread of Protestant ideas challenged traditional social hierarchies, promoting the idea of individual conscience and religious autonomy. This empowerment of individuals, though often fraught with internal struggle and violence, provided a foundation for future social and political reforms that would slowly reshape the world as Europeans knew it. The peasantry, often burdened by poverty and injustice, found in the Reformation a powerful message of hope and liberation. The reformers' critiques of the Church's wealth and corruption resonated deeply with those who had suffered under years of economic hardship and social inequality. Yet, this newfound religious freedom did not automatically translate into economic or social equality. The Reformation's impact on the peasantry was uneven, with some communities experiencing liberation and social change, while others found themselves caught in the crossfire of religious conflict and social upheaval. The intellectual ferment of the Reformation had a profound impact on the development of education and literacy. The rise of Protestantism led to a demand for greater access to education, especially the ability to read and interpret the Bible. This demand, in turn, spurred the growth of schools and universities, disseminating knowledge and promoting intellectual curiosity. The printing press played a key role in this process, facilitating the widespread distribution of religious texts and fostering a culture of reading and learning. The accessibility of these once rare texts allowed even the most humble of individuals to gain access to powerful ideas, creating an unprecedented degree of intellectual freedom. The Reformation's impact extended beyond the purely religious sphere, shaping the political landscape of Europe in profound ways. The rise of Protestantism challenged the traditional authority of the Holy Roman Emperor and the papacy, weakening the existing political order and leading to new forms of political organization and state formation. The religious wars that erupted across Europe during the Reformation profoundly reshaped the political map, leading to the redrawing of borders and the realignment of alliances. The struggles between Protestants and Catholics redefined the relationship between religion and politics, creating a legacy that would extend across centuries. The political ramifications also impacted the existing social systems. The Reformation challenged the established feudal structures and hierarchies, leading to a new dynamic between rulers and their subjects. The concept of individual conscience, a fundamental aspect of the Reformation, paved the way for new social contracts between the government and the governed. This, though not immediately obvious, formed the seeds of change that would ultimately challenge traditional power structures, paving the way for future revolutions that would reshape society. The legacy of the Reformation is a complex and multifaceted one. It was a period of profound upheaval and change, marked by both progress and violence, reform and reaction. While it led to religious conflict and persecution, it also fostered intellectual innovation, social change, and the rise of new political entities. The religious landscape of Europe was forever altered, leaving an indelible mark on the history of the continent, and shaping the course of future events in profound and lasting ways. The seeds of dissent, once sown in quiet whispers, had blossomed into a full-blown revolution, reshaping the very fabric of European society. The long-term consequences of this profound transformation would continue to unfold for centuries to come, leaving behind a legacy that would irrevocably change the course of history. The reverberations of Martin Luther's 95 Theses, initially a tremor in the seemingly unshakable foundations of the Catholic Church, had escalated into a full-blown earthquake. Across Europe, the seismic shifts were felt most acutely within the powerful families who held the reins of power: the Habsburgs, the Valois, and the Tudors. Their decisions, born of political pragmatism, religious conviction, or a potent mix of both, would shape the course of the Reformation and the destiny of their respective kingdoms for centuries to come. The Habsburgs, inheritors of a vast empire stretching across Europe, were staunch defenders of the Catholic faith. Charles V, the Holy Roman Emperor, found himself at the helm during this tumultuous period, burdened by the weight of tradition and the pressure of maintaining religious unity across his sprawling domains. His was a position of immense power, but also of profound vulnerability. The rise of Protestantism threatened not only the religious order he sought to uphold, but also the very fabric of his empire. Luther's ideas, spread like wildfire by the newly invented printing press, found fertile ground in many of his territories. Princes and nobles, emboldened by the growing support for Protestantism, challenged the emperor's authority, demanding religious freedom or, in some cases, outright secession from the Habsburg realm. The choice before Charles V was stark: crush the rebellion with overwhelming force, risking widespread bloodshed and the fracturing of his empire, or attempt to negotiate a compromise that might preserve the semblance of unity while conceding to the rising tide of dissent. The emperor, a devout Catholic burdened by the weight of his crown, ultimately opted for a path fraught with peril and inconsistency, swinging between military campaigns and diplomatic overtures, always striving to maintain a balance that proved increasingly elusive. The Habsburg family, fractured internally by conflicting loyalties and beliefs, mirrored the broader divisions ripping through the continent. Marriages, once forged to consolidate power and religious conformity, now became sources of friction, as Protestant relatives clashed with Catholic ones, often with devastating consequences for their personal relationships and family dynamics. The Valois monarchy in France navigated the Reformation's tempestuous waters with a different tack. While officially Catholic, the French crown recognized the growing strength of the Huguenots, the French Protestants. Their numbers swelled, particularly among the urban population and within certain noble families. Instead of employing the brute force favored by the Habsburgs, the Valois initially adopted a more nuanced strategy, a complex game of alliances and concessions designed to balance religious factions within their kingdom. This pragmatic approach, however, was far from seamless. The Huguenots, gaining influence and power, sometimes acting as powerful regional players challenging the crown's authority directly. The precarious balance between religious tolerance and the suppression of dissent led to periods of relative peace punctuated by outbreaks of extreme violence. The St. Bartholomew's Day massacre, a horrific episode of religious persecution, served as a chilling reminder that the facade of religious coexistence could shatter, leaving a trail of bloodshed and lasting distrust. The Valois family, caught in the cross-currents of religious and political maneuvering, found their internal unity tested as family members took different sides in this struggle, sometimes finding themselves fighting against one another in the brutal religious wars that scarred France for decades. The very fabric of the Valois family, like the French nation itself, was strained by the pervasive tensions of religious division. Across the English Channel, Henry VIII's actions presented a unique and largely self-serving response to the Reformation. His break from Rome, the establishment of the Church of England, and his subsequent dissolution of the monasteries were less about theological conviction and more about securing his political power and his desire for a male heir. This personal ambition, however, had seismic implications for England's religious landscape and its relationship with the continent. Henry's actions, while consolidating his own authority, created a vacuum that was quickly filled by various religious factions, leaving England embroiled in a complex internal struggle for religious and political dominance. The Tudor family, once united under Henry's iron will, became divided by the religious conflicts they sparked. His successors, Edward VI, Mary I, and Elizabeth I, each navigated the turbulent waters of religious conflict in their own distinctive ways, shaping the Church of England's future and their nation's destiny in unpredictable ways. The consequences of Henry VIII's impulsive actions extended far beyond the realm of religion, profoundly impacting English politics, society, and its relationships with its continental neighbors. The Reformation's impact on family dynamics was profound. The bonds of kinship were strained, sometimes severed entirely, as family members found themselves on opposing sides of the religious divide. Marriages were disrupted, inheritances contested, and long-standing alliances shattered. The Habsburg, Valois, and Tudor families, once symbols of stability and power, became microcosms of the larger societal conflicts playing out across Europe. Within the family structures, loyalties were tested, and personal beliefs often clashed with political expediency, leading to painful choices that had lasting repercussions for generations to come. The decisions of these powerful families, shaped by personal ambition, political considerations, and religious conviction, indelibly marked not only their own histories, but also the destinies of their nations, influencing the political map of Europe for centuries to come. The religious upheaval triggered by the Reformation led to widespread social and economic changes. The dissolution of the monasteries, once important centers of charity and education, caused significant disruptions, leading to unemployment and the displacement of many. Religious iconoclasm, the systematic destruction of religious artifacts, triggered violence and unrest. The Reformation challenged existing social hierarchies, fostering the idea of individual conscience and religious autonomy. This shift, although uneven and sometimes violent, ultimately paved the way for social and political reforms that would reshape Europe in the centuries to come. The Reformation's impact on education was significant. The rise of Protestantism led to an increased demand for literacy, particularly among the populace, so they could read and interpret the Bible for themselves. This spurred the growth of schools and universities, leading to the expansion of knowledge and the promotion of intellectual inquiry. The printing press played a crucial role in this process, enabling the rapid dissemination of religious and secular texts, making knowledge more accessible to a wider audience. The political consequences of the Reformation were far-reaching. The rise of Protestantism challenged the traditional authority of the Holy Roman Emperor and the Pope, weakening the existing political order. The religious wars that followed redrew the political map of Europe and realigned alliances. The relationship between religion and politics was fundamentally redefined, a legacy that would continue to reverberate through the centuries. The Reformation was a period of immense transformation, a time of both progress and conflict, of reform and reaction. It challenged established authority, prompted intellectual innovation, and sparked social change. While it brought with it religious conflict and persecution, it also unleashed a wave of intellectual ferment and social progress that would shape the course of European history for centuries. The decisions made by the Habsburgs, Valois, and Tudors, caught in the maelstrom of this upheaval, left an indelible mark on the continent's destiny, showcasing the intricate interplay between family dynamics, religious beliefs, and political power in the face of unprecedented change. The legacy of the Reformation continues to resonate, reminding us of the enduring power of ideas and the profound consequences of choosing sides in times of religious and political upheaval. The embers of Martin Luther's defiance, initially flickering like candles in the wind, had ignited a raging inferno across Europe. The Reformation, far from a quiet theological debate, had become a crucible of violence, forging new alliances and shattering old ones in a series of devastating religious wars. The Habsburg lands, once a seemingly unified tapestry of power and faith, became a battleground, scarred by the clash of Catholic and Protestant armies. Charles V, burdened by the weight of his empire, found himself perpetually embroiled in conflict, his armies marching across his own territories, fighting not foreign invaders, but his own subjects. The Schmalkaldic War, a brutal conflict pitting Protestant princes against the emperor, exemplified the devastating consequences of religious division. Cities were besieged, harvests destroyed, and the land laid waste by years of unrelenting warfare. The economic repercussions were catastrophic, crippling the prosperity of many regions and pushing the already strained Habsburg finances to the brink of collapse. Beyond the grand battles, smaller-scale conflicts erupted across the Habsburg territories, each a microcosm of the larger struggle. Local lords, seizing upon the chaos, declared their own allegiance, often switching sides with opportunistic ease, further destabilizing the empire. Family members, once bound by blood and shared inheritance, found themselves pitted against one another, their loyalty torn between their religious convictions and their family obligations. Marriages, once strategic tools for consolidating power, dissolved into bitter disputes as Protestant and Catholic spouses clashed over faith and the upbringing of their children. The once proud Habsburg dynasty, the architects of a vast empire, found themselves fractured and weakened, their authority challenged not only from without, but from within the very core of their family. The echoes of this internal strife reverberated through the generations, leaving a legacy of distrust and bitterness that would shape the future of the dynasty for centuries. The religious wars that ravaged the Habsburg lands were not unique. France, too, was consumed by its own brutal conflicts, sparked by the rise of the Huguenots. The Valois, initially employing a more subtle strategy of containment and negotiation, ultimately found themselves dragged into the vortex of violence. The St. Bartholomew's Day massacre, a horrifying episode of state-sponsored violence against the Huguenots, became a chilling symbol of the depths of religious hatred. The massacre, a carefully planned and coordinated slaughter, shocked Europe and irrevocably altered the landscape of the French wars of religion. The subsequent years were marked by a cycle of violence and uneasy truces, with the country repeatedly ravaged by civil war. The conflict was not merely a clash of armies, it was a war fought within families, communities, and even within individuals. The Valois themselves were deeply divided, with members of the royal family supporting both Catholic and Huguenot causes. The intense personal stakes of these conflicts infused the wars with a ferocity rarely seen in purely political conflicts. Loyalties shifted with alarming frequency as political calculations and personal vendettas intertwined, creating a fluid and chaotic battlefield where neither side could be truly certain of its allies. The brutality of the conflicts left indelible marks on the French psyche, shaping its culture and politics for centuries to come, forever echoing the violence and division of the religious wars. In England, Henry VIII's break with Rome and the establishment of the Church of England created a different kind of religious conflict, one less outwardly violent, but still deeply disruptive. The dissolution of the monasteries, though primarily motivated by Henry's lust for wealth and consolidation of power, triggered significant social and economic upheaval. The sudden loss of employment, coupled with the destruction of religious institutions, created widespread discontent and triggered a new wave of social unrest. The English Reformation was not without its violence, however, as Henry's successors, Edward VI and Mary I, struggled to impose their own religious visions upon a deeply divided nation. Mary's attempt to restore Catholicism to England resulted in a wave of brutal religious persecution, solidifying the deep-seated religious divisions that would characterize English society for generations. The religious wars were not simply battles fought on the open field, but also deeply personal struggles played out in the heart of families. The children of Henry VIII, Edward, Mary, and Elizabeth, each inherited a different religious legacy, and each confronted the religious and political challenges of their times in their own unique way. The tensions between Edward VI's Protestantism and Mary's Catholicism were played out on a national scale, but also, crucially, within the royal family itself. Their conflicting views not only caused political upheaval but also deeply affected the personal relationships within the family. The ensuing clashes, rooted in their conflicting religious beliefs, dramatically influenced their reigns, their political strategies, and the trajectory of England's religious landscape. Their siblings' destinies were closely tied to their fluctuating personal and political alliances. These were not simply wars between nations or religions, they were, in many ways, family conflicts writ large. Elizabeth I's long reign brought a period of relative religious stability to England, but the underlying tensions remained. The Elizabethan settlement, while successful in establishing a form of religious compromise, could not entirely eradicate the deep religious divisions within the country. The legacy of religious violence continued to cast its shadow long after the wars had officially ended. The precarious balance established by Elizabeth was testament to the fragility of peace after a period of such profound religious strife. The fear and distrust that simmered beneath the surface of the outwardly stable society constantly threatened to boil over. The religious wars had indelibly changed England and left a lingering sense of uncertainty. The impact of the religious wars extended far beyond the immediate battlefield. The destruction of crops, the disruption of trade, and the displacement of populations led to widespread economic hardship. The social fabric of many communities was torn apart, as families were divided and old alliances shattered. The psychological scars of violence and persecution were deep and long-lasting, leaving generations to grapple with the legacy of religious conflict. The wars also significantly impacted the political landscape of Europe, redrawing borders, reshaping alliances, and ultimately changing the balance of power on the continent. The conflicts left behind shattered economies, devastated landscapes, and societies deeply divided along religious lines. The legacy of these religious wars is a complex and multifaceted one. While the immediate devastation is clear, the deeper impact extends far beyond the simple tally of casualties and destroyed cities. The religious wars fostered profound social, political, and economic changes that continue to resonate today. The very nature of European governance was fundamentally altered, as the authority of the Church and the Holy Roman Empire were challenged and ultimately diminished. The seeds of modern nation-states, born out of the ashes of religious conflict, were sown in this period of immense upheaval. These wars were not just a historical event, they were a watershed moment in the transformation of European civilization, leaving behind a complex and enduring legacy. The deep divisions and lingering mistrust created by this period of profound religious strife would continue to shape European history for centuries to come. The experiences of the Habsburgs, Valois, and Tudors, caught in the maelstrom of religious conflict, became emblematic of the complex interplay between religious belief, family dynamics, and the pursuit of political power, an interplay which indelibly shaped the course of European history. The seismic shift caused by the Reformation reverberated through the very foundations of the Holy Roman Empire, fracturing its once seemingly monolithic structure. The Emperor Charles V, inheritor of a vast and complex realm encompassing territories steeped in both Catholic and Protestant beliefs, found himself wrestling not just with foreign adversaries, but with the deeply ingrained divisions within his own domain. The Schmalkaldic War, a brutal conflict that pitted Protestant princes against the emperor's forces, served as a stark illustration of the empire's profound internal fracturing. The clash wasn't merely a military campaign, it was a civil war fought on a scale previously unimaginable within the confines of the Holy Roman Empire. Cities, once bastions of cultural and economic prosperity, were subjected to prolonged sieges, their populations decimated and their infrastructure razed. The economic consequences were devastating. The protracted warfare disrupted trade routes, destroyed harvests, and crippled industries. The flow of vital resources essential to the empire's continued functioning was disrupted, leading to widespread economic hardship and famine. Charles V, burdened by the weight of his vast empire and the relentless drain on his resources, found his financial stability teetering on the brink of collapse. His attempts to maintain control over his increasingly rebellious subjects only exacerbated the crisis, fueling further resentment and resistance. The very fabric of the empire, meticulously woven together through generations of Habsburg rule, was unraveling at the seams. Beyond the large-scale conflicts, countless smaller skirmishes and power struggles erupted across the Habsburg territories. Local lords, opportunistic and ambitious, exploited the chaos to consolidate their own power, frequently switching allegiances as the tides of war shifted. The once reliable structure of feudal loyalties dissolved into a chaotic kaleidoscope of shifting alliances, rendering effective governance increasingly difficult. The Habsburg family itself became a microcosm of this internal conflict, as members found themselves divided along religious lines, their familial bonds stretched and ultimately broken. Marriages, once carefully orchestrated alliances to secure political power, dissolved into acrimonious disputes over faith and the upbringing of children. The unity and cohesion of the Habsburg dynasty, once the cornerstone of imperial strength, was seriously compromised. The impact on the lives of ordinary people was profound. The constant state of war and uncertainty created a climate of fear and insecurity, impacting every aspect of daily life. Families were torn apart as members found themselves on opposing sides of the conflict. Communities were ravaged by violence and disease, and the long-term psychological scars of war would continue to shape the lives of survivors for generations to come. The narrative of the Reformation, therefore, was not just one of theological debate and religious upheaval, but also a story of human suffering, sacrifice, and resilience. This period of upheaval also saw the rise of new political entities and power structures within the Holy Roman Empire. The Protestant princes, initially united in their opposition to the emperor, soon developed their own internal divisions and competing ambitions. The rise of powerful Protestant leagues and alliances further fragmented the empire, challenging the emperor's authority at every turn. The emperor's attempts to regain control frequently resulted in new waves of violence and further destabilized the political landscape. The dream of a unified and harmonious Habsburg Empire, once considered a reality, was now a distant memory, replaced by a fractured and volatile political landscape. The shifting political landscape also profoundly affected the relationship between the Holy Roman Empire and the papacy. The Reformation challenged the very foundations of the papal authority, weakening its influence and grip on the political affairs of Europe. The emperor himself, while a devout Catholic, found his ability to wield his power limited by the internal conflicts and pressures emanating from the rising Protestant movement. The traditional balance of power between the temporal and spiritual authorities was irrevocably shattered, ushering in a new era of uncertainty and rivalry. The Catholic Church, struggling to reconcile its traditional authority with the burgeoning Protestant challenge, embarked upon a period of internal reform and counter-reformation, leading to new measures to consolidate its position and maintain its influence. The Reformation also spurred significant social and cultural transformations within the Holy Roman Empire. The establishment of Protestant churches challenged the existing social order, resulting in changes to religious practices, social institutions, and the very way people viewed their place in the world. The rise of literacy, fueled in part by the Protestant emphasis on Scripture, spurred educational reforms and a greater dissemination of knowledge. This cultural dynamism, while fueled by religious conflict, also engendered a period of intellectual and artistic ferment, albeit often overshadowed by the violence and instability. The changing religious landscape also impacted family structures and gender roles, leading to some subtle but noteworthy shifts in traditional societal norms. Despite the turmoil and chaos of the Reformation, it is important to note that it was not a monolithic movement. Different Protestant denominations emerged, each with their own theological interpretations and practices. This internal diversity, while enriching the religious landscape, also contributed to the overall fragmentation and complexity of the period. The diversity of views and the resulting conflicts further fueled the ongoing political instability. The constant state of flux only amplified the difficulties faced by the Habsburgs and other rulers in maintaining control over their territories. The Habsburgs, despite their initial efforts to suppress the Protestant movement, ultimately had to adapt to the changing reality. They recognized that outright suppression of Protestantism was unrealistic and politically unsustainable. They therefore resorted to a strategy of compromise and negotiation. While conflicts continued, a period of slow and gradual accommodation began to develop, marking a tentative shift toward a more pragmatic approach to resolving religious differences. The balance of power, however, remained precarious, the possibility of renewed conflict ever present. The Reformation's long-term consequences for the Habsburg Empire and Europe would ultimately be profound and enduring. The seeds of a new European order, one vastly different from that which had preceded it, were being sown in this turbulent age. The echoes of the Reformation would continue to reverberate through European society for generations to come, shaping its political, religious, and cultural landscape in profound and far-reaching ways. The Habsburgs' legacy would forever be intertwined with this era of unprecedented change and upheaval, a testament to the enduring impact of religious conflict on the course of history. The Reformation's tendrils reached far beyond the battlefield, weaving themselves into the very fabric of society, reshaping family structures, and forever altering the power dynamics within the Holy Roman Empire. The three families, each touched in unique ways by the religious upheaval, serve as microcosms of this profound transformation. Consider, for example, the impact on familial relationships. Marriages, once primarily political arrangements designed to secure alliances and consolidate power, now found themselves fractured by religious differences. The once sacred bonds of kinship were strained, and in some cases, shattered completely, as family members found themselves on opposing sides of the religious divide. Children were caught in the crossfire, their upbringing and futures subject to the fluctuating tides of religious conflict. The concept of a unified family unit, once considered a cornerstone of societal stability, now became a battleground of competing faiths and loyalties. The social impact extended beyond the immediate family unit. Communities, once held together by shared religious beliefs and practices, now found themselves deeply divided. Neighborhoods, once harmonious, became sites of simmering tension and, at times, outright violence. The once predictable rhythm of daily life was disrupted, replaced by a climate of uncertainty and fear. The familiar comfort of shared religious traditions gave way to suspicion and mistrust, eroding the very foundation of community life. The Reformation forced individuals to confront fundamental questions about their beliefs, their identities, and their place in the world, often leading to painful personal re-evaluations and difficult choices. The disruption of social cohesion was far-reaching, extending into economic activities, social interactions and community stability. The social landscape was forever altered. The Reformation's influence on the political landscape was equally profound. The rise of Protestant states within the Holy Roman Empire challenged the emperor's authority, leading to a dramatic shift in the balance of power. The previously monolithic structure of the empire fractured into a complex mosaic of competing religious and political entities. The emperor's efforts to maintain control, often involving military campaigns and suppression of Protestant movements, only served to exacerbate the internal divisions. The once harmonious relationship between the emperor and the papacy disintegrated, creating a complex and frequently adversarial dynamic that further destabilized the region. The economic consequences of the Reformation were far-reaching and devastating. The prolonged religious wars disrupted trade routes, destroyed harvests, and crippled industries. The constant state of conflict drained resources, leading to widespread economic hardship and famine. Cities, once vibrant centers of commerce and culture, were reduced to rubble. The flow of capital and goods essential for the empire's survival were drastically reduced. Towns withered under economic pressure, and the empire struggled to maintain its vital infrastructure. The long-term economic repercussions significantly impacted the lives of ordinary people, leading to increased poverty, social unrest, and a fundamental erosion of societal well-being. The cultural impact of the Reformation was equally profound. The rise of Protestantism led to significant changes in religious practices, social institutions, and cultural values. The Protestant emphasis on literacy and access to scripture spurred educational reforms and a wider dissemination of knowledge. New universities and schools were established, contributing to a flourishing of intellectual and cultural activity. The increased literacy rates also led to a growing demand for printed materials, fueling the printing revolution and promoting the spread of new ideas. This cultural dynamism, however, often came at a cost. The religious conflicts fueled intolerance and censorship, and the existing societal structures often faced challenges and transformations as new paradigms started to develop. The Reformation's impact extended beyond the immediate upheaval, shaping the political and religious landscape of Europe for centuries to come. The emergence of new Protestant denominations further fragmented the religious landscape, fostering theological debate and contributing to the already existing political instability. The peace treaties that finally concluded the major religious conflicts frequently proved fragile and short-lived, with the possibility of renewed conflict ever present. The Reformation's legacy was therefore one of profound and lasting change, reshaping not only religious beliefs, but also the political, social, economic, and cultural fabric of the Holy Roman Empire and beyond. The long-term effects on the three families are significant and are intrinsically linked to the broader societal changes. The disruption of traditional power structures and the rise of new political entities shifted their familial alliances and relationships. Their wealth and influence, once largely derived from their connections to the Catholic Church and the Emperor, were altered by the Reformation. Some families experienced losses in wealth and power, while others adapted to the new realities, forging alliances with the rising Protestant princes. The shift in religious power also changed inheritance laws and impacted family governance, thus having consequences in the long term for the three families and their influence on the European political scene. The legacy of the Reformation is one of both destruction and creation. It brought immense suffering, yet it also fostered a spirit of intellectual and religious inquiry that shaped the trajectory of European history. The conflicts resulting from the Reformation irrevocably changed the relationships between the three families, creating new tensions and shifting allegiances. The once stable social order gave way to a more complex and fragmented society. However, from the ashes of the conflicts arose a new Europe, a Europe transformed by the ideas and the upheaval of the Reformation. The seeds of modernity were sown in the crucible of religious conflict, and the effects would be felt for generations to come. The Reformation, a period of immense upheaval and violence, simultaneously laid the groundwork for profound societal changes that continue to impact the world today. The religious wars of the Reformation left a deep scar on Europe, a scar which continues to influence the historical narrative and the relationship between religion and the state even to this day. The echoes of this transformative period remain, reminding us of the profound and lasting impact of religious conflict on the course of human history. Chapter 6. The Twilight of the Empire. The year is 1618, a chill wind, mirroring the icy grip of fear tightening across the Holy Roman Empire, whipped through the cobbled streets of Prague. The echoes of the defenestration of Prague, a symbolic act of defiance that had ignited the 30 Years' War, still reverberated through the land. The once mighty empire, a patchwork quilt of principalities and fiefdoms, was unraveling at the seams. The emperor, Ferdinand II, a staunch Catholic, found himself increasingly isolated, his authority challenged not only by rebellious Protestant princes, but also by the gnawing internal divisions within his own court. The three families, the von Habsburgs, the Fuggers, and the Wettins, found their carefully constructed alliances and carefully amassed wealth increasingly precarious. The von Habsburgs, the imperial family, saw their ancestral lands threatened by the encroaching armies of the Protestant Union. Their once unassailable power, built on centuries of shrewd marriages and strategic alliances, was crumbling under the weight of religious conflict. The emperor's attempts to suppress Protestantism, far from unifying the empire, had only served to deepen the chasm between Catholic and Protestant states, fueling a firestorm of resentment and rebellion. The lavish court life that had once symbolized imperial grandeur now seemed a hollow display against the backdrop of widespread famine and unrest. The Fuggers, once the undisputed masters of European finance, felt the tremors of the economic earthquake rocking the empire. Their vast trading network, meticulously built over generations, was severely disrupted by the incessant warfare. Trade routes were closed, markets collapsed, and the constant threat of plunder and destruction hung heavy over their enterprises. The once unimaginable possibility of bankruptcy loomed large, a testament to the devastating economic consequences of protracted conflict. Their influence, once wielded through their financial might, began to wane as their coffers shrank and their traditional political leverage diminished. The Wettins, caught between the warring factions, found themselves navigating a treacherous political landscape. Their attempts to remain neutral were increasingly difficult, their strategic alliances strained by the shifting allegiances of neighboring states. The internal divisions within their own family, mirroring the larger divisions within the empire, added to their woes. Some members of the family leaned towards the Protestant cause, while others remained steadfastly Catholic. These familial divisions threatened to fracture the family's unity and political standing, further complicating their efforts to maintain their influence and territorial integrity. The social fabric of the empire was disintegrating. The once vibrant cities, centers of commerce and culture, were now scarred by conflict. Pillaging armies left trails of destruction in their wake, leaving behind devastated towns and villages. The peasantry, already burdened by heavy taxation and the vagaries of the weather, suffered unimaginable hardship. Famine stalked the land, leading to widespread starvation and disease. The familiar social order was shattered, replaced by a climate of uncertainty, fear, and despair. The religious divide was no longer simply a matter of theological debate. It had become a brutal reality that manifested in acts of violence and persecution. Catholics and Protestants viewed each other with suspicion and hatred, their religious differences morphing into a bitter, irreconcilable conflict. Religious persecution escalated, with both sides resorting to extreme measures to enforce their beliefs. This widespread violence against nonconformists created a climate of fear and instability, undermining the very foundations of societal harmony. The political landscape of the empire had fragmented into a kaleidoscope of warring factions. The emperor's authority had eroded considerably, leaving him to wrestle with defiant princes and rebellious nobles. The dream of a unified, powerful empire seemed increasingly distant as regional alliances shifted and rivalries intensified. Foreign powers eagerly exploited the empire's instability, interfering in internal conflicts and carving out their own spheres of influence. The once formidable military strength of the empire was weakened by internal strife and strained resources, creating an opportunity for its enemies to strike with renewed vigor. The three families, once pillars of the empire, were now caught in a maelstrom of their own making. The von Habsburgs faced the Herculean task of restoring order and authority, but the lack of resources and the deepening religious division made it an almost impossible task. The Fuggers struggled to salvage their shattered economic empire, their fortunes dwindling with each passing battle. The Wettins, torn between competing loyalties, tried to maintain a precarious balance in this rapidly evolving, tumultuous environment. The future of the empire, and the future of these three families, hung precariously in the balance. The once grand palaces, with their opulent tapestries and echoing halls, now resonated with a sense of foreboding. Intrigue and betrayal were commonplace, as family members plotted against one another in a desperate bid for power and survival. The moral compass of the aristocracy seemed to have spun wildly off course, with pragmatism replacing principle and ruthless ambition eclipsing loyalty. The weight of responsibility, coupled with the ever-present threat of violence and ruin, began to wear on the families, transforming their members and the way they engaged with both politics and each other. The daily lives of ordinary people became a stark reflection of the empire's decline. The vibrant markets, once bustling with activity, were now often deserted. The joyous festivals that once celebrated the harvest were now somber occasions, overshadowed by the grim reality of famine and death. The once proud cities, symbols of cultural and intellectual flourishing, were now scarred by war, their beautiful buildings reduced to rubble, their streets choked with the debris of conflict. The familiar comforts of everyday life had vanished, replaced by widespread poverty, disease, and despair. The once flourishing artistic movement within the cities withered under the weight of the war. The patronage that fueled the arts and sciences disappeared as resources were diverted to military campaigns. The cracks in the empire's foundations were not merely metaphorical, they were visible in the crumbling infrastructure, the abandoned farms, and the vacant, haunted eyes of its people. The once great power that had dominated Europe for centuries was now vulnerable, its decline hastened by its own internal contradictions and exacerbated by the ambitions of its enemies. The old order, once seeming immutable, was finally yielding to the forces of change, irrevocably altering the historical landscape of Europe. The war didn't just threaten the existence of the empire, but also the very essence of what it meant to be a European citizen, and the centuries-long societal structure seemed poised for a dramatic and irrevocable alteration. The very fabric of society was fraying under the pressure, and the future remained uncertain and ominous. The twilight of the empire had truly begun, and with it, a new era of uncertainty, conflict, and profound transformation was about to dawn. The tremors of the French Revolution, initially felt as distant rumbles, soon escalated into a seismic upheaval that shattered the fragile peace of the Holy Roman Empire. Napoleon Bonaparte, a name whispered first with apprehension, then with a chilling mixture of awe and dread, rose from the ashes of revolution to become the undisputed master of France, and a formidable threat to the entire European order. His ambition, fueled by an insatiable appetite for conquest, cast a long shadow over the already beleaguered empire, accelerating its decline and forcing the three families, the von Habsburgs, the Fuggers, and the Wettins, into a desperate struggle for survival. The year 1792 marked a turning point. The French revolutionary armies, imbued with a fervent revolutionary zeal and a newfound sense of national unity, surged across the Rhine, their bayonets glittering under the banner of liberty, equality, and fraternity. The initial response of the empire was one of disjointed resistance. The fragmented nature of the empire, with its myriad of independent principalities and fiefdoms, made coordinated defense almost impossible. The von Habsburgs, despite their imperial authority, found themselves struggling to muster a unified force capable of repelling the French advance. Their armies, weakened by years of internal conflict and depleted resources, were no match for the disciplined and highly motivated French troops. The initial defeats were swift and demoralizing, shattering the illusion of imperial invincibility. The Fuggers, acutely aware of the economic ramifications of war, watched with growing alarm as French troops occupied key trade routes and disrupted their vital commercial networks. The disruption of trade led to a sharp decline in their revenues, further weakening their financial position. Their attempts to maintain their neutrality, hoping to avoid the worst of the conflict, proved futile as the French, driven by their revolutionary ideology and insatiable greed, showed little respect for traditional economic structures. The once unstoppable juggernaut of Fugger finance began to sputter, its engine choked by the dust of war and the winds of revolution. The Wettins, caught in the crossfire, found themselves forced to make difficult choices. Some members of the family, drawn to the promises of reform and modernization offered by the French, secretly sympathized with the revolution. Others, loyal to the emperor and the traditional imperial order, vehemently opposed the French advance. These internal divisions further weakened the Wettin family's political influence, making it increasingly difficult to navigate the turbulent waters of European politics. Their efforts to mediate between the warring factions proved unsuccessful as the conflict spiraled out of control, engulfing them in its destructive vortex. The military campaigns that followed were brutal and relentless. Napoleon's innovative military tactics, his use of combined arms and his masterful ability to inspire his troops, proved devastatingly effective. The antiquated military strategies employed by the imperial armies were no match for his dynamic approach. Battles raged across the empire, leaving a trail of devastation in their wake. Cities were besieged, fortresses fell, and the countryside was ravaged. The constant influx of refugees from battle zones further strained the already precarious resources of the empire. The political maneuvering was just as brutal. Napoleon, a master of political intrigue, skillfully exploited the divisions within the empire, playing the various factions against one another. He offered alliances and concessions to individual princes and nobles, creating divisions and undermining the emperor's authority. His propaganda machine, effectively portraying the French Revolution as a liberating force, further weakened the imperial cause. The emperor, struggling to maintain his grip on power, found himself increasingly isolated and vulnerable. The three families were forced to confront their ultimate test. The von Habsburgs faced the agonizing reality of their empire's decline, their ancestral lands increasingly under threat from the French. Their attempts to negotiate peace terms with Napoleon proved unsuccessful as he was relentless in his demands. The Fuggers, confronted with the imminent collapse of their financial empire, were forced to make desperate choices to preserve their wealth and protect their family's legacy. The Wettins, caught between warring factions, struggled to maintain their integrity and their family's position within the shifting landscape of European power. As the 18th century gave way to the 19th, the shadow of Napoleon loomed larger than ever. The Holy Roman Empire, once a symbol of imperial grandeur and power, was in its death throes. The once unbreakable bonds of loyalty and allegiance crumbled under the weight of war, revolution, and political intrigue. The era of aristocratic power and imperial dominance was drawing to a close, giving way to a new order dominated by the rise of nationalism and the consolidation of nation-states. The three families, once pillars of the old order, were forced to adapt and change or face extinction. The fate of the empire and their own futures hung precariously in the balance, their hopes, their fortunes, their very lives intertwined with the relentless march of Napoleon's armies and the revolutionary fervor sweeping across Europe. The twilight of the empire was not just a period of decline and disintegration, it was a crucible forging a new, uncertain future. The reverberations of this historical cataclysm would continue to shape the course of European history for centuries to come. The old world was dying, and from its ashes, a new world was struggling to be born. The seeds of the modern nation-state were sown in the blood-soaked fields of the Napoleonic Wars, a testament to the brutal and transformative power of revolution and the end of an era. The future, however, remained shrouded in uncertainty, a stark reflection of the uncertain times that lay ahead. The year 1806 arrived like a death knell, echoing the finality of the empire's demise. Napoleon, having decisively defeated the combined forces of Austria and Russia at Austerlitz the previous year, stood triumphant, his gaze fixed on the crumbling edifice of the Holy Roman Empire. The Emperor Francis II, burdened by the weight of centuries of Habsburg legacy and the crushing reality of defeat, made the inevitable decision. On August 6, he issued a declaration, dissolving the Holy Roman Empire, a structure that had held sway over much of Central Europe for a millennium. The intricate tapestry of princely states, archbishoprics, and free imperial cities once a symbol of fragmented yet enduring power, was unraveling, its threads severed by the relentless march of Napoleonic ambition. The act of dissolution was not merely a symbolic gesture, it was a profound shift in the geopolitical landscape of Europe. The map of the continent was redrawn, erasing centuries of established power structures. The immediate aftermath was a period of chaos and uncertainty. Princes and nobles, stripped of their imperial titles and responsibilities, scrambled to secure their own futures, forging alliances with Napoleonic France or seeking refuge within the newly emerging nation-states. The familiar rhythms of imperial life ceased, replaced by the discordant symphony of revolution and upheaval. The von Habsburgs, though stripped of the imperial title, retained their vast Austrian territories. Francis II, now Francis I of Austria, embarked on a program of internal reform, attempting to consolidate his power and modernize his domains. The Habsburg dynasty, though wounded, was far from vanquished. Their survival hinged on a pragmatic adaptation to the changing political realities. They had learned, albeit painfully, the limitations of their traditional reliance on a fragmented and often unreliable imperial structure. The vast resources and administrative capabilities of the Austrian monarchy allowed them to weather the initial storm, but the shadow of Napoleon still loomed large. The loss of imperial prestige was a deep wound to the family's pride, a constant reminder of the empire's collapse and the shifting power dynamics in Europe. The family's future success depended on navigating a new world order, one characterized by powerful nation-states and assertive nationalism. The Fuggers, however, faced a far more precarious situation. Their vast financial empire, built over centuries of shrewd investment and meticulous management, lay in ruins. The disruption of trade routes, the instability caused by the Napoleonic Wars, and the general economic turmoil had severely eroded their wealth and influence. The once unmatched power of their financial network was severely diminished, leaving them vulnerable to the changing economic landscape. Their attempts to maintain neutrality had failed, and their vast network of trade and financial holdings were damaged and plundered by the ravages of war. The family's immense wealth, accumulated over generations, became a target for the revolutionary fervor sweeping across Europe. They were forced into a desperate struggle for survival, seeking to salvage what remained of their fortune and protect their legacy. The intricate web of familial alliances and commercial networks that had been their strength became a liability, as they were forced to grapple with the complex new relationships of power and influence. The Wettins, caught in the turbulent currents of the dissolving empire, found themselves navigating a treacherous political landscape. The internal divisions within the family, between those who sympathized with the revolutionary ideals and those who remained loyal to the old order, continued to weaken their position. Their attempts to mediate between opposing factions proved futile as the conflict raged on. The family's influence and political sway within the empire vanished with the empire itself, forcing them to re-evaluate their place in the new world order. Some members of the family sought to adapt, forging alliances with the rising powers, while others struggled to maintain their traditional way of life, clinging to the fading remnants of the old order. The Wettins' future depended on the ability to reconcile their differing ideologies and unite their efforts to adapt to the new realities and reclaim their place among the influential power families of Europe. The legacy of the Holy Roman Empire was complex and multifaceted. Its dissolution marked the end of a long era of decentralized, quasi-feudal rule in Central Europe. It also paved the way for the rise of the modern nation-state, a system of government based on national identity and centralized authority. The Napoleonic Wars, while devastating, acted as a catalyst for this change. The old order's collapse allowed for a restructuring of political and social institutions, setting the stage for a Europe that would become vastly different from the one that existed before the Revolution. The three families, the von Habsburgs, the Fuggers, and the Wettins, each played a significant role in shaping the history of the Holy Roman Empire. Their experiences during its final days and the resulting dissolution offered valuable lessons about the precarious nature of power, the challenges of adaptation in a rapidly changing world, and the enduring importance of legacy. The Habsburgs, though stripped of their imperial title, managed to adapt and maintain their dominance in Austria, demonstrating the resilience of a dynasty rooted in centuries of experience and administrative efficiency. The Fuggers, on the other hand, found their vast financial empire significantly diminished, highlighting the vulnerability of economic power in times of political upheaval and war. The Wittelsbach experience exemplifies the challenges faced by smaller ruling families who tried to maintain their power in a rapidly changing world without the resources of larger empires. The fall of the Holy Roman Empire marked not just the end of a political entity, but the culmination of a long-term process of political, social, and economic transformation. The seeds of its decline were sown long before the French Revolution, a slow erosion of its power and authority resulting from internal conflicts, economic inequalities, and the rise of new forms of political organization. The French Revolution merely accelerated a process already underway. The empire's fragmentation, its lack of central authority, and the conflicting interests of its constituent states all contributed to its vulnerability to external pressures. The legacy of the Holy Roman Empire extends far beyond its political and territorial boundaries. It left an enduring mark on European culture, law, and social structures. Its impact can still be seen in the political landscape of Europe today, particularly in the enduring presence of some of the successor states. The dissolution of the empire, however, remains a pivotal moment in European history, signaling the end of an era and paving the way for the emergence of a new political and social order. It was a period of profound change, filled with both tragedy and opportunity, a crucible in which the old world was destroyed, and the foundations of the new were laid in the ashes. The story of the three families, inextricably intertwined with the fate of the empire, stands as a testament to the enduring power of history, the resilience of human spirit, and the complex interplay of fate and choice. The legacy they left behind continues to resonate through centuries, shaping the course of European history in ways both subtle and profound. Their story, a microcosm of a larger historical drama, serves as a reminder of the impermanence of power and the importance of adaptation in a world perpetually in flux. The echoes of the Holy Roman Empire's dissolution reverberated across Europe for generations, shaping the political, economic, and social landscapes of the continent. While Napoleon's ambition had directly caused the empire's collapse, the enduring influence of the Habsburgs, Fuggers, and Wittelsbach extended far beyond the immediate aftermath. Their legacies, intertwined with the fabric of the empire's existence, continued to shape the course of European history in profound and unexpected ways. The Habsburgs, though stripped of the imperial title, emerged from the crucible of the Napoleonic era remarkably resilient. Francis I, formerly Francis II, focused his energies on consolidating his power within the Austrian territories. He implemented a series of internal reforms aimed at modernizing the administration, strengthening the military, and fostering a sense of national unity amongst his diverse subjects. The Habsburg bureaucracy, honed over centuries of managing a vast and complex empire, proved adaptable to the new realities. Their extensive network of administrators, diplomats, and spies, previously utilized to maintain control over the fragmented empire, was repurposed to consolidate power within Austria. This pragmatic adaptation, a stark contrast to the rigid adherence to tradition that had characterized some aspects of the old empire, allowed them to weather the storms of revolution and war. However, the shadow of the past loomed large. The loss of the imperial crown was a deep wound to the Habsburg pride, a constant reminder of their diminished status. The family grappled with the shifting power dynamics, carefully maneuvering their way through the intricate alliances and rivalries of Napoleonic Europe. They engaged in a delicate balancing act, seeking to maintain their independence while avoiding direct confrontation with the formidable French emperor. This required astute diplomacy, skillful negotiation, and a willingness to compromise, a significant departure from the often absolutist stance of previous Habsburg rulers. Their ability to adapt and navigate the complex political landscape proved crucial in ensuring their survival and the continuation of their dynasty. The Habsburg legacy extends beyond mere political survival. Their contribution to the cultural and artistic landscape of Europe continued unabated. Vienna, under their patronage, remained a significant center for music, art, and intellectual discourse. The Habsburg court, though smaller in scope than it once was, continued to exert considerable cultural influence across Europe. The Fuggers' experience after the empire's collapse was markedly different. Their immense financial network, built over centuries of shrewd investment and international trade, suffered a catastrophic blow. The Napoleonic Wars disrupted trade routes, destabilized markets, and ravaged economies across Europe. The once unrivaled Fugger banking system, which had financed wars, emperors, and even exploration, found itself struggling to survive. Their vast holdings were plundered, their investments lost, and their influence severely diminished. The family's neutrality, a policy carefully maintained for generations, had failed to protect them from the devastating consequences of war and the revolutionary fervor that swept across the continent. The revolutionary governments, suspicious of the vast wealth accumulated by the Fuggers over centuries, viewed them with suspicion and hostility. This led to confiscation of assets and restrictions on their activities. The Fuggers' once impregnable financial fortress was breached, forcing them to engage in desperate measures to salvage what remained of their fortune and protect their family's legacy. They were forced to re-evaluate their business strategies, diversify their investments, and engage in a desperate struggle to regain their former prominence. The collapse of their financial empire serves as a cautionary tale about the fragility of economic power in the face of political upheaval, and the perils of relying on a system that is vulnerable to the whims of war and revolution. However, their resilience also showed through, as they gradually rebuilt their wealth and influence, albeit on a smaller scale. The Fugger story demonstrates the adaptability of business families in the face of tremendous setbacks. The Wettins, holding smaller territories within the former empire, faced a more precarious situation. Internal divisions within the family deepened, reflecting the broader political conflicts that racked Europe. Those who sympathized with the ideals of the French Revolution found themselves at odds with those who clung to the traditions of the old order. This internal strife weakened the family's position, making them vulnerable to external pressures. Their attempts at mediation between warring factions within their own family and the wider political landscape were largely futile. The absence of the Holy Roman Empire removed the structural support upon which their influence had rested. Unlike the Habsburgs with their vast territories, or the Fuggers with their widespread financial network, the Wettins lacked the resources to withstand the political and economic turmoil. Their strategy, which had focused on navigating the complex web of alliances within the empire, proved inadequate in the new world order. Some members sought alliances with emerging powers, others attempted to cling to the remnants of the old order. This fractured response further weakened their influence. Their story serves as a poignant illustration of the challenges faced by smaller ruling families in a rapidly changing world, highlighting the importance of adaptation and unity in the face of overwhelming forces. The Wettins' experience underscored the fragility of power structures rooted in a system that no longer existed. Their struggle to re-establish themselves in the newly formed nation-states illustrates the difficulties smaller entities faced adapting to the shifting balance of power. The long-term impact of the three families was significant and far-reaching. The Habsburg survival demonstrated the resilience of established dynasties with access to resources and an efficient administration. Their ability to adapt their governing style and consolidate their power within Austria laid the groundwork for their continued influence in Central Europe. The Fuggers' near collapse showed the vulnerability of immense economic power in times of political upheaval, proving that even the most astute financial strategies could be swept away by unforeseen circumstances. Their eventual resurgence, albeit on a diminished scale, highlights the enduring spirit of entrepreneurial families. The Wettins' struggle to maintain their influence illustrates the challenges of smaller families attempting to navigate a dramatically altered power structure, emphasizing the importance of unity and adaptability. Their combined legacies offer valuable insights into the complex interplay of power, adaptation, and survival in times of profound political change. The dissolution of the Holy Roman Empire, while a watershed moment, was not a sudden rupture, but the culmination of a long process of internal weaknesses and external pressures. The three families' differing responses to these changes provide crucial historical insights into how established power structures adapt, or fail to adapt, to the forces of modernization and revolution. The Habsburgs' pragmatic approach to reform and consolidation showcases how established powers can reconfigure their resources to survive. The Fuggers' experience warns of the fragility of wealth in times of great upheaval, and the Wettins illustrate the challenges faced by smaller powers, lacking the resources of empires or financial institutions. The stories of these three families serve as a powerful reminder of the continuous evolution of power dynamics in Europe, and more generally, how even the most powerful families, dynasties, and institutions are subject to the forces of change. Their enduring legacies continue to resonate, reminding us that the past is never truly past, and that understanding its complex narrative is crucial to interpreting the present and anticipating the future. The fate of the Holy Roman Empire and these three powerful families are woven into the very fabric of European history, their influence still felt centuries later, a testament to the enduring strength of human ambition, resilience, and the persistent power of legacy. The twilight of the Holy Roman Empire cast long shadows, its demise echoing through the halls of power and the chambers of commerce for generations to come. The Habsburgs, Fuggers, and Wettins, three families whose fates had been inextricably intertwined with the empire's rise and fall, found themselves navigating a drastically altered landscape. Their stories, though distinct, converged in a shared experience of profound political and economic upheaval, offering a compelling case study in adaptation, resilience, and the enduring power of legacy. The Habsburgs, while stripped of the imperial title, proved remarkably adept at navigating the post-Napoleonic world. Francis I, formerly Francis II, demonstrated a shrewd pragmatism, abandoning the rigid absolutism of his predecessors in favor of a more modern approach to governance. He focused on consolidating his power within Austria, modernizing its administration, and strengthening its military. The extensive Habsburg bureaucracy, a testament to centuries of imperial experience, was effectively repurposed to manage the newly defined Austrian territories. Their network of spies and diplomats, previously deployed across the vast empire, now served to maintain control within a significantly smaller, albeit more concentrated, domain. This pragmatic adaptation allowed the Habsburgs to not only survive, but also to maintain a considerable degree of influence in Central Europe. Vienna, under their continued patronage, retained its status as a major European cultural center, a testament to the Habsburgs' enduring commitment to the arts and intellectual pursuits. Their ability to adapt, to shed the archaic trappings of empire and embrace a more modern, centralized model of governance, proved crucial to their survival as a major European power. The loss of the imperial title served as a catalyst for reform, pushing them to re-evaluate their strategies and consolidate their power more effectively within their remaining territories. The Fuggers, however, faced a far more perilous journey. Their vast financial empire, built on centuries of shrewd investments and international trade, was devastated by the Napoleonic Wars. The disruption of trade routes, the destabilization of markets, and the widespread economic devastation across Europe crippled their operations. Their once unrivaled banking system, which had financed emperors and explorers alike, was forced to contend with massive losses and widespread suspicion. Their meticulously crafted neutrality, long a cornerstone of their strategy, proved inadequate in the face of revolutionary fervor and the rampant instability of the Napoleonic era. Revolutionary governments, suspicious of their accumulated wealth and power, seized assets and imposed restrictions on their activities. The Fuggers, accustomed to unparalleled influence and prosperity, were forced to confront the fragility of their economic empire. They had to adapt, to diversify their investments, and to meticulously rebuild their fortune. The family's ability to weather this storm, though their recovery was slow and arduous, demonstrates an impressive resilience and an understanding of the interplay between political and economic forces. Their narrative serves as a poignant reminder that even the most carefully constructed financial edifice is vulnerable to the unpredictable forces of war and revolution. The Wettins, rulers of smaller territories within the former empire, faced the most precarious situation. Lacking the vast resources of the Habsburgs or the extensive network of the Fuggers, they were particularly vulnerable to the shifting power dynamics of the post-Napoleonic era. Internal divisions within the Wettin family mirrored the wider political fragmentation sweeping across Europe. Their strategy, previously reliant on navigating the complex web of alliances within the Holy Roman Empire, proved inadequate in the New World Order. Some members attempted to forge alliances with the emerging nation-states, while others clung to the dying embers of the old order. This internal discord weakened their position, hindering their ability to adapt to the new realities. Their story represents the struggles of smaller ruling families, illustrating the challenges of maintaining power and influence when the structural support of a long-standing political system is removed. Their story serves as a sobering counterpoint to the relative success of the Habsburgs, highlighting the critical need for unity and adaptability, especially for those lacking the substantial resources necessary to weather the storms of major historical shifts. The lasting legacies of these three families are complex and multifaceted. The Habsburgs' pragmatic adaptation demonstrates the resilience of established dynasties capable of reform and centralization. Their story underlines the importance of efficiently managing resources and skillfully adapting to changing political circumstances. The Fuggers, though initially devastated, ultimately demonstrated the tenacity of entrepreneurial families and the enduring power of adaptation in the face of crippling economic setbacks. Their story highlights the resilience of wealth, the capacity of financial prowess to rebuild, even from catastrophic loss. The Wittelsbach experience, however, serves as a poignant reminder of the difficulties faced by smaller entities lacking the resources and the unity to navigate profound historical upheaval. Their struggle serves to illustrate the precariousness of power founded on a rapidly vanishing system of governance. The intertwined destinies of these three families provide a rich tapestry against which to understand the long-term effects of the Holy Roman Empire's dissolution. Their experiences, the Habsburgs' resilient consolidation, the Fuggers' precarious recovery, and the Wittelsbach's struggle for survival, represent different approaches to navigating the abrupt ending of an era. The fall of the Holy Roman Empire was not merely a political event, it was a catalyst for profound transformation, exposing the vulnerabilities and strengths of existing power structures. The three families' responses highlight the complexities of adaptation, the fragility of wealth, and the critical importance of internal unity in a rapidly changing world. The echoes of the Holy Roman Empire's demise resonated for centuries, shaping the political and economic landscape of Europe. The Habsburgs' continued influence in Austria, the Fuggers' eventual resurgence, and the Wittelsbach's struggles to maintain relevance all demonstrate the complexities of navigating major historical shifts. The fall of the empire was not simply a political event, but a crucible that forged the future of Europe, testing the mettle of dynasties, families, and institutions alike. The experience of these three families, their successes and failures, their resilience and vulnerabilities, serves as a timeless case study in adaptation, emphasizing the enduring power of human ambition and the persistent influence of the past on the present. Their stories, intertwined with the narrative of the Holy Roman Empire's final days, stand as enduring testaments to the complexity and dynamism of European history. Their legacies continue to remind us of the ebb and flow of power, the constant struggle for survival and dominance, and the ever-present challenge of adapting to the inevitable winds of change that reshape the world. The rise and fall of empires, the fluctuating fortunes of powerful families, all serve as poignant reminders of the impermanence of power and the resilience of the human spirit. Their struggles, triumphs, and ultimately their legacies, serve as an enduring lesson for all those who dare to navigate the complex currents of history. In the tapestry of time, their threads remain interwoven, a vibrant testament to the enduring power of the human story.